This wouldn't have happened if he had just requested a Sage Realm expert to protect her. After all, in Lin Ming's world, Sage Realm experts were the pinnacle of power. However, he had been too busy with too many things back then and had actually neglected her matters. Regardless of all that, I'll still come back. It's just a matter of time. Ernest Lin shook her head and said, what right did she have to blame Lin Ming? Lin Ming had already helped her a lot. Every time there was danger, Lin Ming seemed to be by her side. However, Ernest Lin still couldn't accept why Lin Ming could grow so fast. With the time Lin Ming had cultivated, if he were an ordinary person, he would at most have reached tier 8 or 9. And even that could be considered extremely monstrous. After all, there were still many who were stuck at tier 3 or 4 for their entire lives. For example, the two people protecting Ernest Lin. They were only at tier 7 and tier 6. Yet, Lin Ming had used such a short period to grow to the point where even the Heavenly Emperor needed to show goodwill. Oh right, you were fine here. So why did you reincarnate into the ordinary world? At this moment, Lin Ming asked Ernest Lin, puzzled. It's because the new gods are too weak compared to the Heavenly Emperor and the others. After hearing Lin Ming's question, Ernest Lin sighed and said, in any world, our faction, even brother alone, can destroy a whole world, and even the guardians of the worlds can't stop us. In the void, we can also destroy most of the void monsters with ease. What? At this moment, Ernest Lin was actually a little emotional. But, are you still being crushed by the Heavenly Emperor and his faction? Lin Ming understood the meaning behind Ernest Lin's words and asked. Yes, Ernest Lin nodded. What does this have to do with you going to the ordinary world? Lin Ming naturally knew that there was a huge gap between the two factions. However, this didn't seem to have anything to do with Ernest Lin reincarnating and suffering in the ordinary world. You probably know that the Heavenly Emperor, Lord Laozi, and the others have clones in every world. On top of that, in every world, there are factions that they have formed, Ernest Lin said. However, they are not affected by their clones in any way. Rather, the strength can even grow. Furthermore, their control over their clones and so on are absolute. Ernest Lin explained. Everyone in our faction exists in the form of stone statues in all the worlds. Of course, this is because there are believers of us in all the worlds, but the stone statues are simply too different from the clones. So you reincarnated into an ordinary world? Lin Ming asked. What use could such a method have? That's right. I was worried that if I enter with my own body, it would be more dangerous. Also, I did make full preparations and erased all my memories, Ernest Lin said. Ernest Lin had put in a lot of effort for this matter. So, did you find any clues? Lin Ming asked. No, Ernest Lin said with a frown. Why are you so concerned about this matter? Lin Ming smiled and asked. The other party just had clones, yet they were already so anxious. Besides, even Lin Ming could make clones. Why would she go to the ordinary world just to be bullied? Because we're dead, and they're alive. It's just that they don't use the power of faith. If they wanted, the new gods in our camp. Ernest Lin took a deep breath. I'm afraid our faction will crumble from the inside out. Ernest Lin gave the final answer. Your father and your brothers have such powerful powers. But they can't create clones? Lin Ming was still very curious about this matter. After all, even someone at the tier of the Great Sage could create outer incarnations. Furthermore, the Great Sage could create as many clones as he had monkey fur on his body. On top of that, the Great Sage's strength wouldn't be affected at all. That won't do. Due to the issue of faith, if all of us have clones, the power of faith will only follow each clone. If we do that, we will be sending ourselves to our end. Ernest Lin shook her head and said, I've already said to not rely on external forces, haven't I? Lin Ming smiled and said, also because of the power of faith. Your power can never truly be on equal footing with the Heavenly Emperor and the others. Lin Ming added, but this is just how our cultivation method is. Everyone has their own path. If we give up on this cultivation method, we will only fall to become ordinary people. Ernest Lin sighed and said, all right, there's no need to say any more. I understand. Lin Ming nodded, indicating that he understood. But you can use clones. After all, I taught you a new way to cultivate the power of faith. Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and said, that's true. Ernest Lin's eyes lit up. It would have been nice if I had met you earlier. I wouldn't have taken so many detours. Ernest Lin sighed and said. Lin Ming only smiled. Although Ernest Lin looked about the same age as him and in his heart, they were equals. She might be older than him by tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Even if it was a little earlier, Lin Ming might not have been born. However, if it was a little earlier, we might not have met. I can only say that we are fated. The time we met was just right. Lin Ming said. Yes. Ernest Lin suddenly remembered that she was probably much older than Lin Ming. Only by reincarnating had she met Lin Ming. So reincarnating was the best decision she had ever made. By the way, do you have any good clone cultivation methods? Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and asked. No. After all, we can't need clones in the New God faction. So we don't have such cultivation methods. Ernest Lin shook her head and said. They couldn't have clones, so it was only a given they didn't have such cultivation methods. It just so happens that I have an excellent clone cultivation method with me. Lin Ming nodded and said, with a gentle tap of his finger. The great sage's outer incarnation cultivation method was transmitted into Ernest Lin's mind. Right now, Lin Ming's strength had already reached the peak of this world. The more so, the more Lin Ming felt that the great sage wasn't simple. This was because even at his current strength, he still felt that the several cultivation methods of the great sage were extremely powerful. Although the essence of power was connected, Lin Ming didn't believe that a power that had such a strong essence would be so simple. Thank you. After Ernest Lin memorized the outer incarnation cultivation method, her eyes lit up. She could also tell that the cultivation method was extremely powerful, even if she were to go and search for one. Based on their powerful strength, it was unlikely that they would be able to find a better clone cultivation method than this one. Oh right. Don't throw too many clones into all the worlds at once. Although you want to have strength on par with the Heavenly Emperor, it will take time. Patience and continuous practice are key. Now that you have found the best path, you shouldn't rush it. Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and said. Okay, I got it. Ernest Lin nodded and said. First, cultivate the outer incarnation to the highest proficiency level. Then throw a few clones into different worlds. Experiment first and observe to see how the effects are. Lin Ming said. Okay. Ernest Lin nodded. Lin Ming's words were the same as her thoughts. I'll cultivate in this small world. Ernest Lin could feel the rich spirit energy in Lin Ming's small world as well as his absolute control over the place. This gave her the idea of cultivating here. No, the power of my small world is different from the power of the world we came in from. If you succeed in cultivating in my small world, I'm afraid that you will be repelled by the entire void upon returning. In the end, you will attract disaster. Lin Ming shook his head and directly rejected Ernest Lin's idea. One had to know that back then, Lin Ming had used the power of chaos to contend with the power of laws. He also had the help of the person in the dark who had made a move. Only then had his powers been finally connected to the small world. Lin Ming could, of course, help Ernest Lin, but doing so would be troublesome. So he decided against it. I see. Ernest Lin nodded. Let's go. Lin Ming opened the small world and said. Okay. Ernest Lin and Lin Ming left the small world together. Lin Ming casually raised his hand and the power of chaos appeared beside Ernest Lin, encircling her. No one here can discover that you're cultivating, nor can they disturb your cultivation, Lin Ming said to Ernest Lin. The new gods here simply couldn't break the power of chaos that could contend with the power of laws. If you're done with your cultivation, send me a telepathy, Lin Ming said. Ernest Lin was of course included among those who couldn't break the power of chaos. All right, I understand, Ernest Lin nodded. I still have something I need to look into. After saying this, Lin Ming disappeared on the spot. Lin Ming had gone to look for the Heavenly Emperor. This was because the Heavenly Emperor knew a lot more than that old man. Furthermore, Lin Ming was in this place purely for Ernest Lin. In Lin Ming's heart, the old man's new god faction was on the other side of the faction he was more inclined to. This was because there was a difference in the cultivation methods or even the appearances of the members. The information that Lin Ming needed to know was only known by the Heavenly Emperor and the others. Speaking of which, the new gods of the old man's faction were indeed quite inferior to the Heavenly Emperor and the others. Please pass on a message to Senior Heavenly Emperor for me. Tell him that Lin Ming requests an audience. Lin Ming stopped in front of the Heavenly Gate and spoke to the two heavenly soldiers guarding it. Yes. Seeing that it was Lin Ming, the two heavenly soldiers didn't dare to slight him at all. Apart from the Heavenly Emperor's special instructions, they had witnessed Lin Ming's attack back then. With Lin Ming's strength, they didn't dare to provoke him at all. There's no need. I've been waiting here for young brother Lin Ming for a long time. Please come in. Suddenly, a voice appeared from the Heavenly Palace. Lin Ming nodded and directly entered the Heavenly Palace. Senior Heavenly Emperor. Lin Ming cupped his fists and greeted the Heavenly Emperor as soon as he entered. What's the matter? The Heavenly Emperor nodded and asked. I want to ask. Do your clones also cultivate the cultivation methods that you cultivate? After all of you have clones in every world. Lin Ming asked straight to the point. Why are you asking about this all of a sudden? Hearing Lin Ming's words, the Heavenly Emperor frowned and asked. This matter was related to some of their secrets. Just asking. Lin Ming smiled and said, very well, I'll tell you. Although the existences of us in every world are merely our clones, they are all at the god tier, so the cultivation methods they use naturally can't be bad. That being said, clones are just clones after all. They will only change according to the changes in the main body's power. The Heavenly Emperor said and indicated that this had nothing to do with the cultivation methods. Why are there existences that will be devoured by their clones? Lin Ming looked at the Heavenly Emperor and asked, you brat, there's really nothing we can hide from you. The Heavenly Emperor waved his hand and said, it's because there are too many clones. So it's normal for some accidents to happen. Some clones may give birth to independent thoughts. In addition to the extreme power they possess and their high starting point, some existences simply can't control their clones anymore. The Heavenly Emperor said, Senior Heavenly Emperor, do you also have such a clone? Lin Ming asked. Yes, I do. But until now, only this one accident has happened. The Heavenly Emperor nodded again and said, I want to know the relationship between you and the outer incarnation. Lin Ming raised his head and looked at the Heavenly Emperor, asking the final question in his heart. The outer incarnation. It's my cultivation method. Moreover, my clones are all outer incarnations. When the Heavenly Emperor heard this question, he was stunned for a moment before answering. It's your cultivation method? Lin Ming frowned. There was a reason for Lin Ming's surprise. After all, it was the great sage who had taught him the outer incarnation cultivation method. Furthermore, it was impossible for the cultivation method that the great sage had taught him to be incomplete. Otherwise, with Lin Ming's current strength and knowledge, he would be able to see the problem with a single glance. Now the Heavenly Emperor was saying that this was his cultivation method. The gap between the great sage and the Heavenly Emperor was too great. Even though they were both god-tier experts, to the Heavenly Emperor, he could kill the great sage with a single finger. This was because the current Heavenly Emperor and the others could no longer be simply defined as the god tier. Yet the two who were worlds apart were using the same cultivation method. To Lin Ming, this was something worthy of pondering. After all, Lin Ming didn't think that the great sage and the Heavenly Emperor would have anything to do with each other. Senior Heavenly Emperor, please take a look. After saying this, Lin Ming immediately used the outer incarnation. This is actually my outer incarnation. The Heavenly Emperor frowned. The outer incarnation that Lin Ming had cast could be said to be one and the same as what he was using. In fact, every outer incarnation that Lin Ming created was purer than his. Who taught you this? The Heavenly Emperor asked. The great sage of my world, Lin Ming answered. Since he could protect the great sage with his current strength anyway, he told the truth. He's one of my clones. Hearing this answer, the Heavenly Emperor regained his calm. He's just your clone? Hearing this, Lin Ming frowned again. He hadn't expected that the great sage was actually the Heavenly Emperor's clone. It was as if an ordinary person on the side of the road had told him that the person himself was the clone of the ruling emperor. Such a contrast was just too hard to accept. Besides, wasn't the difference between the great sage and the Heavenly Emperor too great? But there is also a heavenly court and a Heavenly Emperor clone in our world. Lin Ming spoke at this moment. I have many clones. If the clone of a world disappears, there will be a new clone to replace it. The Heavenly Emperor said. However, why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you wipe out the clone that gave birth to an independent consciousness? Lin Ming voiced his doubts. Although Lin Ming and the great sage had a friendly relationship, he would still ask the questions he wanted to know. Since the flower has bloomed, why should I kill it? Besides, A clone that has given birth to an independent consciousness might be useful in the future. I have a few clones in the heavenly court who have given birth to their independent consciousness. Their loyalty, growth, and power are all extraordinary. The heavenly emperor waved his hand and said, "You're quite magnanimous." Lin Ming smiled and said, "There's no need to say that." The heavenly emperor also shook his head, appearing extremely humble. However, Lin Ming did not believe what the heavenly emperor said at all. This was because the heavenly emperor did not seem to be such a magnanimous person. Every few 100,000 years or even less, there will be a great battle in every world. Even the god-tier experts will die one after another. After that, the surviving god-tier experts will leave their original worlds far away. I would like to ask you, does this matter have anything to do with the heavenly court? Lin Ming raised his head and looked at the heavenly emperor as he asked. There should be god-tier experts in Lin Ming's origin world since before Lin Ming had come to the void. Pangu had already forged physical bodies for the demon god and the others. However, if Lin Ming had not appeared, the most powerful existence in that world would only be at the sage realm. Yes, the heavenly emperor nodded and frankly admitted it. Not very much so, though. After all, I'm not the only one controlling the strings. The heavenly emperor added. He knew that Lin Ming had just left his world and come to this world. Other than that, Lin Ming had only cultivated for a short time, so he had quite a bit of resonance with this world. Therefore, he didn't put his words too absolute. Was it all planned by the existences in the void? Lin Ming asked suspiciously. Some battles were a result of the experts finding out the chance to advance further in their worlds, while some were plotted. However, the vast majority of the battles were plotted by other worlds and the existences in the void. After all, at such tiers, they aren't fools and won't act rashly. The heavenly emperor said, a battle between two worlds is the easiest to happen. Of course, there are many that were plotted. The heavenly emperor himself had plotted for a war between worlds. Why would people from other worlds and the void participate in the affairs of another world and plot wars? Lin Ming didn't understand. The people were living a good life. Why did those from the other worlds have to meddle in their affairs? It's nothing more than benefits. If there were no benefits, I'm afraid no one would waste their brains to do such things. The heavenly emperor replied. However, I will say that those new gods had started most wars. For example, the War of the Gods, Ragnarok, and so on were all started by them. In the end, they couldn't even retreat unscathed. The heavenly emperor sneered. Their power comes from faith. For faith, war is necessary. After all, how could people be so devout to burn incense for the gods when they're rich and contented? The heavenly emperor didn't think much of their methods in using the power of faith to cultivate. Therefore, what they are best in and most willing to do is to make an entire world suffer. The heavenly emperor was also quite displeased with some aspects of the way they did things. This was why they were split into two factions. But in the end, they can't escape unscathed from the wars they started. Other than their powers being not that strong, their brains are also not that bright. The heavenly emperor felt that those who used the power of faith to cultivate were not very smart. Lin Ming, I advise you to stay away from them. It is not worth it for a woman. Besides, with your current strength, even if you snatch a woman, they won't be able to resist it. At worst, you can come to me. I'll back you up. As the heavenly emperor spoke, he actually extended an olive branch to Lin Ming again. There's no need. Lin Ming waved his hand and said, I understand what you have said. Lin Ming said, but in our world, your clone has disappeared. Why didn't you let your clone enter again? In Lin Ming's world, no god-tier experts had appeared in the past 100,000 years. The clones of the heavenly emperor were everywhere. If the clone of a world was destroyed, a new clone should have arrived. Because in your world, there is a person called Pangu. The heavenly emperor sighed. What? Pangu? Lin Ming frowned when he heard Pangu's name. He didn't expect that Pangu would be mentioned by the heavenly emperor in the void. That's right, Pangu. He has sealed his world so that even my clone can't enter. The heavenly emperor nodded and said, because your clone is not as strong as Pangu, right? Lin Ming asked. No, you underestimate Pangu too much. He's in existence, who can cultivate to be of equal footing with us although he's in an ordinary world. The heavenly emperor shook his head and said, if the void was compared to an ordinary world, it would definitely be easier to cultivate in an ordinary world, because there was the concept of space and time there. Also, it wasn't an endless darkness like the void. In the void, there was more danger. In addition, spirit energy was thin in the void, so it was not easy to cultivate. However, everyone had overlooked one point, and that was the few mighty figures that had been born in the void. They had all been born by heaven and earth. The moment they were born, they possessed extremely powerful strength. Even those in the advanced god tier were considered the weakest. With such a starting point and their compatibility with heaven and earth, they could cultivate to achieve such strength. However, it was different for Pangu. Pangu was merely mortal. Compared to them, his starting point was very much down and under. Let's put it this way. Without you, Pangu will definitely be the one and only of all the worlds. To show our respect to Pangu, we didn't put our clones in your world for more than 100,000 years. After all, Pangu can be considered our fellow friend. The Heavenly Emperor continued. He did quite admire Pangu. After all, Pangu was just an ordinary mortal. It must have been very difficult for him to cultivate to be on equal footing as them. Now you know why your little girlfriend chose to reincarnate into your world, right? The Heavenly Emperor looked at Lin Ming with a smile and said, "It's because there are no clones of any factions in your world. Other than being extremely fair, Pangu is also very kind. He will not interfere with anything in the world. Of course, the prerequisite is that no one breaks the rules. Your little girlfriend, whether it was her growth or her memory, she had controlled them well. She was no different from an ordinary person. Therefore, Pangu did not make a move on her. In fact, if someone from another world arrives to destroy Ernest Lin, Pangu will even protect her." The Heavenly Emperor continued. "You knew about this, too." Hearing this, Lin Ming interrupted the Heavenly Emperor and asked, "After all, let alone Ernest Lin." The Heavenly Emperor didn't even think much of the old man who was called father. But now, the Heavenly Emperor actually knew everything about Ernest Lin. This was intriguing, and even a little frightening. Such a person clearly looked down on her. But her every move and even her intentions were all clearly known to him. Ernest Lin had originally thought that her methods were flawless, but now it seemed that they were nothing more than a joke. "You didn't send a clone to Pangu's world, so why do you know so many things?" Lin Ming looked at the Heavenly Emperor and asked, "My clone died, but my divine consciousness still exists, so I know everything." The Heavenly Emperor smiled. "Which is to mean you know everything in all the worlds." Hearing this, Lin Ming nodded his head and asked, "If that was the case, the Heavenly Emperor would be even more monstrous than the world crystal in Wudong's world. If it were true, didn't it mean that the Heavenly Emperor's divine consciousness had reached a level that was even unthinkable to Lin Ming? That's not exactly accurate. I can only say that if I want to know, I will know." The Heavenly Emperor explained. "I see," Lin Ming nodded. If that was the case, the Heavenly Emperor's divine consciousness should not be as strong as he had thought just now. He should have stored all the information in his clones. If he wanted to know some information, he could extract it from them. With this, although it seemed that the Heavenly Emperor's divine consciousness was not that strong, he was extremely skilled in his methods. We aren't as stupid as the new gods to only create stone statues in every world. With those things one can only gain faith. Other than that, they're useless. The Heavenly Emperor still didn't think much of those from the new god faction. If the few of us have any thoughts, their new god faction will definitely be destroyed." The Heavenly Emperor said coldly. "Then why are you leaving them be?" Lin Ming asked. After all, the Heavenly Emperor and the others didn't seem to be such magnanimous people. They shouldn't have allowed the existence of an opposing faction. This was a loss of their dignity. HMPH, although they're weak, there's someone behind them. So, we can't touch them." Hearing this, the Heavenly Emperor snorted and said, "Someone?" Lin Ming frowned and asked, "Yes, two people whose strength is not weaker than Lord Laozi." The Heavenly Emperor nodded. If it were in regards to strength, divine artifacts, and other means, Lord Laozi is naturally the strongest on our side. There is no doubt about that. And behind the new god faction, there are two people who are not inferior to Lord Laozi. The Heavenly Emperor said, "Your power is also inferior to Lord Laozi." Lin Ming asked with a smile, "Isn't that obvious? But I'm only slightly inferior to Lord Laozi." The Heavenly Emperor did not hesitate at all. It was enough to prove the strength of Lord Laozi. After all, the Heavenly Emperor was the leader of his faction. His arrogance was a given. Zhu Jiayan should be the weakest on our side. Lin Ming said. That's right. Zhu Jian is the weakest. That being said, he can destroy any one of the new gods. At this moment, the Heavenly Emperor brought up the new gods again. It may not be the case in the future. Lin Ming smiled and said. After all, he had taught Ernest Lin a new cultivation method. The power of faith, the clone, and the power of plunder were not to be taken lightly. This would allow Ernest Lin's power to grow at a terrifying speed. It was indeed very difficult for Heavenly Emperor and others to grow in strength, or in other words, it was very difficult for their strength to advance a little even in 10,000 years. Only when they had a sudden insight into something would they grow in their strength. However, Ernest Lin was different. His current strength couldn't even sweep across the new god camp. However, the cultivation speed of the power of faith was terrifying. Moreover, the most important thing was that it was very difficult to reach the peak for such cultivation. If all the lives in the world had the power of faith on Ernest Lin, perhaps Ernest Lin would be able to suppress Heavenly Emperor. Yes, now that you've appeared, it's different. Heavenly Emperor looked at Lin Ming and said in disbelief. Lin Ming's appearance was like a dream. I still can't believe that you could cultivate to such a level in such a short time, said Heavenly Emperor. Do you have any secrets? Heavenly Emperor actually asked Lin Ming for advice. By the way, do you have a small world? Lin Ming didn't answer Heavenly Emperor's question. Instead, he asked if Heavenly Emperor had a small world. No, I don't. Heavenly Emperor shook his head and said. Pangu has it. Besides Pangu, no one else has it. Heavenly Emperor spoke again. Even someone as powerful as Lord Laozi couldn't have his own small world. Why? Lin Ming frowned and asked. According to Heavenly Emperor, Lord Laozi was even stronger than Pangu. However, only Pangu had this small world. It's because if we open up our own small world, we will be targeted by Heaven's order. Previously, there was an extremely powerful person at our end. His name is Young Jian. Heavenly Emperor closed his eyes and began to reminisce. Young Jian was his nephew with whom he had a real blood relationship. Young Jian was sanctified in the flesh. The power he had was rarely seen for tens of thousands of years. Although the cultivation speed was not as fast as Lin Ming's, it was extremely terrifying. Young Jian? Lin Ming frowned. He was very familiar with this name. He forcefully opened up his own small world. In the end, he was annihilated in Heaven's order. And back then, I didn't even have a way to stop it. Heavenly Emperor sighed and said. Heavenly Emperor, who had existed for countless years, had long lost his emotions. However, he really had a special feeling towards Young Jian. This was because Young Jian was the only descendant that related to him by blood. However, he was also buried in Heaven's order. That's why up until now, none of us have opened up a small world. Heavenly Emperor certainly knew the benefits he would receive after opening up a small world. However, under the pressure of Heaven's order, no one dared to defy the heavens. Young Jian's strength had definitely surpassed that of Heavenly Emperor. However, he was also annihilated in the end. He had no way to resist. Actually, I was just about to say that a small world can allow you to grow quickly. Lin Ming rubbed his head and said. For beings like us that were born from the heavens and earth, there's no way we can open our own small world. Heaven's order doesn't allow it. That's because when we open up our own small world, we pose a threat to this world. Heavenly Emperor sighed and said. Then, why was Pangu able to open up his own small world? Lin Ming asked curiously. When he opened up his own small world, he was also attacked by Heaven's order. If it weren't for someone secretly helping him, Lin Ming would have also been annihilated by Heaven's order. Besides the fact that Pangu is not the birth of heaven and earth, Pangu is also the incarnation of virtue. Previously, Pangu resurrected from the dead and had deceived Heaven's order. Heavenly Emperor said with great envy. He actually deceived Heaven's order? Lin Ming frowned. It seemed that Pangu had experienced a lot of things. Of course, Lin Ming would not ask all of them. You have also opened up your own small world? Heavenly Emperor frowned and asked. Yes. Lin Ming nodded and said. Lin Ming did not hide anything from him. After all, what Heavenly Emperor said was nonsense. He was in fact aware from the very beginning that Lin Ming had a small world. Now that Heavenly Emperor asked surprisingly, it meant he had other plans. Do you also have a method to deceive Heaven's order? Can you teach me? Heavenly Emperor rubbed his hands and asked Lin Ming. No, I repelled Heaven's order. Lin Ming shook his head and said. What? Although he knew that Lin Ming had his own small world, he did not expect Lin Ming to have repelled heaven's order. This was simply unbelievable. After all the worlds were controlled by heaven's order. And everything in these worlds was like the birth of the thought of heaven's order. Just like Heavenly Emperor, he might have also been born from the thought of heaven's order. And at this moment, Lin Ming actually said that he repelled heaven's order. This was indeed unbelievable. I know you won't believe it, but everything I said is true, said Lin Ming. Lin Ming didn't want to hear any more nonsense. But Heavenly Emperor wanted to say something but hesitated. He also knew that Lin Ming wouldn't lie to him. However, he couldn't believe what Lin Ming had said. At that time, someone did help me. Lin Ming recalled when he opened up the small world. Heaven's order had indeed appeared. However, heaven's order did not make a move in the end. Someone helped you? Was it that existence that repelled heaven's order? Heavenly Emperor frowned and asked. That's right. Lin Ming nodded. At that time, he really did not have the power to fight against heaven's order. There's actually such an existence in this world? Heavenly Emperor could not help but ask again. Since Heavenly Emperor had reached such a position, he naturally knew some secrets. That was, there were some hidden existences above him. However, why would such an existence help Lin Ming? Originally, he was curious as to why Lin Ming could become so powerful in such a short time. Now, he somewhat understood that Lin Ming's identity was definitely not so simple. Lin Ming might have been the descendant of a hidden existence. This made sense. If such a hidden existence pushed Lin Ming behind his back, Lin Ming would naturally reach a realm which they couldn't believe in an extremely short time. Do you know that existence? Heavenly Emperor quickly asked. If he could get to know the existence of such a realm, it was indeed a blessing for 10 lifetimes. After all, there were absolutely not more than 2 or 3 such hidden existences in all the worlds. They were considered the strongest existence. I just felt that the aura is a little familiar, but I don't know the existence. Lin Ming shook his head and said. Heavenly Emperor nodded. Lin Ming had never seen it before, but he felt that the aura was familiar. This could tell a lot of things. In fact, the subsequent growth in my strength was due to the growth of the small world. When the small world grows, my strength grows as well, said Lin Ming. This was a state of growth whereby the small world would grow when Lin Ming's strength was growing, and the growth of the small world would feed Lin Ming in return. In the end, the main reason why Lin Ming's soul could materialize as such was that the small world had become a chaotic body. If we have a small world, it will be a threat to heaven's order. When the time comes, we will need to pay a visit to Pengu. At Heavenly Emperor's level, it was very difficult for him to grow further. Heavenly Emperor knew that although his current strength was sufficient for his use, however, if he could advance further, he might be able to enter a whole new realm, and although it was only a step away, it might bring him 2 kinds of fates. If there's nothing else, I'll make a move now. Lin Ming cupped his fists. Since he had already asked all the questions he had wanted to ask, there was no point in staying. You kept asking me questions. I still have questions for you. Heavenly Emperor quickly stretched out his hand and said, Please go ahead. Lin Ming nodded. After all, he had asked him so many questions, and he couldn't ask them for free. How did you become a soul body? Can you tell me? Heavenly Emperor asked. If what he had now was only his physical body, heavens and earth, and heaven's order might have fewer restrictions and supervision on him. Although it was extremely powerful, each world had its own clone, but it still had the feeling of second to none. It was actually a fortuitous coincidence. I can only say that the soul body is also known as self-severing. Self-severing, after you understand them thoroughly, you should be able to find the answer within. Lin Ming pondered for a moment before speaking. All right, I understand now. Heavenly Emperor nodded thoughtfully. What he said sounded like nonsense after listening too much. However, if it didn't make any sense, he wouldn't say much. Farewell. Lin Ming cupped his fists and disappeared. At this moment, a new force had appeared in all the worlds. This force was extremely powerful. In a short period of time, it was on equal footing with the Heavenly Emperor's force. And the master of this force was actually the new god of the West. This was naturally Ernest Lin's faction. Ernest Lin? Lin Ming? At this moment, Heavenly Emperor realized this point. No wonder Lin Ming said that it might not be the case in the future. Lin Ming, this little brat, is really a variable. I'm afraid that a big change is going to take place, said Heavenly Emperor. Lin Ming's actions now gave him a great sense of threat. They had allowed the new god of the West to exist because they had two extremely powerful bosses behind them. And now, with Lin Ming's appearance and Ernest Lin's special relationship, the new god's side had posed a threat to Heavenly Emperor and others. HMPH. Heavenly Emperor snorted and disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Lin Ming had also felt what Ernest Lin was doing. Lin Ming only smiled. After all, since he was growing his own strength, it didn't matter if he made a big show of it. Instead of cowering, he might as well take the opportunity to quickly grow himself. After all, Lin Ming was still supporting Ernest Lin from behind. Lord. Heavenly Emperor's voice appeared in Du Shuai Palace. Heavenly Emperor. Lord Laozi saw Heavenly Emperor and welcomed him. Do you know what happened in the various worlds? Heavenly Emperor asked. Of course I know. Since Lord Laozi was reckoned the most powerful existence, he naturally had the most acute observation ability. Then why are you so calm? If this continues, their new god camp might really pose a threat to us. Heavenly Emperor frowned and said, why are you so anxious? Lord Laozi only smiled and said, until now, did you see any other new god throwing their clones into the different worlds? Lord Laozi looked at Heavenly Emperor and asked, this other than Ernest Lin? There is really no one else. Heavenly Emperor calmed down and said, the power of faith is different from our cultivation method. If they could cultivate in this manner, they would have done it long ago. Why do they wait until now? And there are only these many lives in all the worlds. If every new god could do it this way, in the end, they wouldn't even need to thank us for making a move. They would kill each other for power. Lord Laozi was indeed more experienced when it came to handling matters. That's true, Heavenly Emperor nodded again. Lin Ming's appearance had caused him too much unease, which was why his thinking had become simple and impetuous. And now, it's just a girl that's growing up Lin Ming. We have nothing to worry about. It's because growing in Ernest Lin will weaken the other new god's powers. Lord, the appearance of Lin Ming is really a variable. Heavenly Emperor suddenly said after a moment of silence. It is indeed a variable. Do you mean you want to attack Lin Ming? The meaning of the word variable was too obvious. No one wanted the existence of a variable. Since it was a variable, then it should be erased. Can it be done? Heavenly Emperor nodded and looked at Lord Laozi seriously. This you have seen Lin Ming's power. It is extremely difficult to truly suppress Lin Ming. Lord Laozi was silent for a moment. Lord Laozi had also felt that Lin Ming's appearance had messed up too many things. However, Lin Ming was still extremely powerful. It would probably be very difficult for them to suppress Lin Ming. Even if they really suppressed him, they would have to pay a huge price. Lin Ming's strength is still growing. If we don't suppress Lin Ming now, I'm afraid we won't be able to turn things around in the future. Heavenly Emperor said, oh? You don't know that Lin Ming has someone backing him? Lord Laozi suddenly looked at Heavenly Emperor and asked. Lord Laozi's words stunned Heavenly Emperor for a moment before he took a deep breath. He didn't know how Lord Laozi knew everything. Even he had just heard about it from Lin Ming. And now, Lord Laozi had just casually mentioned this matter. This caused him a sense of fear towards Lord Laozi. Lin Ming shouldn't be here for long, Lord Laozi said. Not for long. Heavenly Emperor frowned and asked. Actually, we don't need to care about Lin Ming. Just treat him as a passerby. There's actually nothing for Lin Ming here. Lord Laozi said again. This. Heavenly Emperor lowered his head and fell silent. After a while, Heavenly Emperor cupped his fists. He agreed with what Lord Laozi said. Lin Ming didn't seem to be interested in anything here. Lin Ming was here because he hadn't been here before. Heavenly Emperor and others here also matched his strength perfectly. Moreover, Ernest Lin was here. Therefore, Lin Ming had never left. It was not bad to calm down and treat Lin Ming as a passerby. At least, this would calm him down. Actually, I can almost guess who the existence is behind Lin Ming. Just as Heavenly Emperor was about to leave, Lord Laozi's voice appeared again. What? When Heavenly Emperor heard this, he frowned. Then quickly tell me who it is. Heavenly Emperor walked forward and asked. That existence might be Lin Ming himself. Lord Laozi pondered for a moment and said. What? Lin Ming himself? Do you mean there are two Lin Ming? Or is Lin Ming himself an existence that can fight against heaven's order? Heavenly Emperor was stunned again when he said this. It was like saying I am who I am. It sounded like nonsense. When one cultivates to the highest realm, everything in the world does not exist. Whether it is time, space, not to mention status and so on, none of them exists. He will be everywhere. Lord Laotzi said. Now, in all our worlds, there is no such existence. However, there has always been a mighty existence with such power and realm. Do you understand this? Lord Laotzi looked at Heavenly Emperor and said seriously. Yes, I do. You mean in the end, Lin Ming will cultivate to become that kind of existence, right? Heavenly Emperor raised his head and said, That's right. Therefore, the best way for us now is not to think about how to suppress Lin Ming, but how to befriend Lin Ming. Even if we can't befriend him, we can't make him an enemy. Lord Laotzi nodded and said, Now that Lin Ming owes you a favor, you should be contented. That favor might be useful in the future. Lord Laotzi said to Heavenly Emperor. Okay, I got it. Heavenly Emperor nodded. Lord, thank you for your guidance. I'll make a move first. Lord Laotzi's words cleared the air in Heavenly Emperor's heart. At this moment, as Lin Ming was in the void, he didn't know what Lord Laotzi and Heavenly Emperor were talking about. Lin Ming arrived at Ernest Lin's palace. In such a short period of time, Ernest Lin's strength had doubled. As everyone was aware, one's strength would become harder to grow when it reached the late stage. Ernest Lin's strength was much weaker than Lin Ming's. It was not even 2/3 of her elder brother's. However, it was also an existence that could suppress the void monsters. Such strength could be doubled in such a short time. One could see how monstrous Lin Ming's teaching method was. If one cultivated the power of faith properly, it would be an extremely good cultivation path. Just like the power of energy and blood that Lin Ming had cultivated at the beginning. It was a good cultivation method. As long as one's strength grew, it would be fine. After all, only when one was strong would others not dare to say anything. Lin Ming, you're here. Seeing that Lin Ming had arrived, Ernest Lin hurriedly stood up. She was extremely grateful to Lin Ming. Lin Ming's appearance had allowed her to obtain the strength that she had not been able to obtain for tens of thousands of years in such a short period of time. Furthermore, Ernest Lin's strength was still growing at a terrifying speed. In the end, she might really have the strength to contend against Heavenly Emperor. In the end, she might even have the strength to surpass Heavenly Emperor. How could Ernest Lin not be surprised? The current Ernest Lin couldn't even control her body from trembling. I'm a little envious of the speed at which your strength is growing. Lin Ming smiled and said, The more the current situation is, the more you have to pay attention to your safety. After all, under such temptation, even the people closest to you may betray you. Lin Ming advised Ernest Lin. I understand. Ernest Lin nodded and said, As long as I can hold on for a while until my strength increases to the point where I can defeat my brother, I can relax a little. Ernest Lin's elder brother wasn't a good person. The other new gods would still have some concerns because of that old fellow. However, his elder brother wouldn't have any concerns. You must not tell anyone about the cultivation method I told you for any reason at all. This will not only cause a civil war in your camp, but it will also affect your growth rate. Even if only one more person uses this method to cultivate, your growth rate will be halted. Lin Ming reminded again. I understand. Even if it's my father, I will not tell him about this cultivation method. Ernest Lin naturally knew what was at stake and nodded again. Ernest Lin knew that Lin Ming would never harm her. I want to go back and take a look. During this period of time, you have to take good care of yourself. Lin Ming said to Ernest Lin. You want to go back? Where to? Hearing this, Ernest Lin was extremely reluctant and asked, Naturally, it's the world you reincarnated in previously. There are still a lot of my memories there. Lin Ming smiled and said, Why not you go back with me? The cultivation of the power of faith is special. Your cultivation speed won't be affected. Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and said, Just nice for you to teach those dead persons who made you reincarnate a lesson, said Lin Ming. Previously, he had treated it as if he didn't protect Ernest Lin well. Now, Lin Ming was going to make a move. All right, Ernest Lin nodded and agreed. At her level, one would have become callous in terms of feelings, especially romantic relationships. It was hard to cultivate. However, Ernest Lin was very fond of being together with Lin Ming. It had nothing to do with Lin Ming's power, nor did it have anything to do with how Lin Ming could help her. She just liked to be with Lin Ming. Even if Lin Ming had no power now and needed her protection, she was willing to be with Lin Ming. Then let's go, said Ernest Lin. Okay, Lin Ming nodded and led Ernest Lin out of the void. The moment he left the void, Lin Ming's speed became extremely fast. It was because after leaving the void, one would possess space. Lin Ming stretched out his palm, and a spatial crack appeared right away. Lin Ming stepped in and returned to the original world with Ernest Lin. As for Wu Dong, he had completed his mission to protect Lin Ming. The current Lin Ming was not someone that anyone could touch. Wu Dong was arranged to be in the new god's camp, and Lin Ming allowed him to grow properly. Buzz. At such a long distance, he directly tore through space and teleported. One could imagine the pressure and the energy required. When they had just arrived, Ernest Lin didn't use any energy. She just followed Lin Ming and teleported, and her face was pale. I'm finally back. Lin Ming took a deep breath and said. This kind of pressure and energy couldn't affect Lin Ming at all. The air here is sweet compared to the void. Ernest Lin nodded and said. The void doesn't even have space. How can there be air? Lin Ming smiled and said. After I left, this world had changed. Lin Ming closed his eyes and said. Everything in this world was covered by Lin Ming's divine consciousness. You're back? Suddenly, a voice appeared in Lin Ming's ear. Lin Ming didn't need to turn around to know whose voice it was. Besides Pangu, no one could sense his return at the first instant, even if Lin Ming didn't hide his aura. I'm back, Lin Ming nodded and said. Your strength has grown very fast. Pangu sized up Lin Ming and said. You even brought your girlfriend back? Pangu looked at Ernest Lin and asked. Pangu knew that Ernest Lin was the daughter of the old guy from the new god camp. However, Ernest Lin had reincarnated cleanly and no longer had anything to do with her previous life. Thus he did not interfere. Yes, in the void I have heard many stories about you. Lin Ming looked at Pangu and said. He did not expect that the guardian of an ordinary world could be at the same level as Heavenly Emperor. You've met Heavenly Emperor? After hearing Lin Ming's words, Pangu directly asked. Yes, in the void I've seen everything I can. Lin Ming nodded and said. This trip wasn't in vain. Pangu patted Lin Ming's shoulder and said. Sir, have you cleared the path to the god tier? Sensing the sudden appearance of several god tier experts in this world, Lin Ming asked. That's right. After such a long time, it wouldn't be a good thing for this world if no god tier experts appeared. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any existence that would feed this world back. Pangu nodded and said. You've just returned. I won't waste your time. I'll let you go. Pangu glanced at Lin Ming and then disappeared from where he was. Pangu fully trusted Lin Ming. He believed that even if he didn't watch on Lin Ming would definitely not do anything that would be detrimental to this world. Lin Ming led Ernest Lin to Gandalf's location. Due to Lin Ming's departure, the camp formed by all of their Sage Realm experts had already been split up. Moreover, the path to God tier had already been cleared. Right now, all the attentions were on cultivation. As for wars and such, no one was in the mood to provoke them. Even if someone had the intention to provoke another war and reap the benefits from it, they would only be reprimanded. No fools would proceed to make a move. And now, the god tier Great Elder in the underworld had awakened. Everyone in the underworld was centered around the god tier Great Elder. However, things were different in the above-ground world. It was because there were still demon god, great sage, and other god tier experts in the above-ground world. They were all the oldest god tier experts. And because Pangu had reconstructed their physical bodies, they were now all following by Pangu's side. Therefore, in the above-ground world, there were no true god tier experts who had become the leaders. And now, Gandalf and Sage Realm Elf had broken through to become beginner god tier experts. Gandalf was extremely surprised. He had originally thought that his lifespan was about to run out, and that there was no path above the Sage Realm. Now, not only did he directly become a god tier expert, but he also had an endless lifespan. Moreover, his strength was on a completely different level. Teacher! Lin Ming bowed to Gandalf when he arrived. Lin Ming, you're back. Gandalf had no idea where Lin Ming had been for such a long time. Although he had now grown into a god tier powerhouse, He was still a beginner god-tier powerhouse. He had just advanced. Moreover, he only had the strength of a beginner god-tier powerhouse, so he had no way of knowing many things. The void, he had only heard of it. He would never have thought that Lin Ming would come back after going around in the void. I'm back. Lin Ming smiled and said, "Congratulations, teacher. You've finally become a god-tier expert. You've truly transformed." Lin Ming congratulated him. A Sage Realm expert was indeed powerful. However, only when one cultivated to the god tier would one truly transform. Not only could their lifespan become endless, but they could also completely break away from the mortal body in all aspects. "This is all thanks to you," said Gandalf. "You can't say that." Lin Ming quickly waved his hand and said. Back then, Gandalf had greatly helped Lin Ming's growth. Gandalf had also been Lin Ming's backer. Even before Lin Ming possessed the power of a god-tier expert, Gandalf had been quietly helping him. After coming to this world, Gandalf had given Lin Ming a feeling of kinship. The main reason why Lin Ming had returned to this world was to visit Gandalf. He had come to see this person who had supported him for so long. Gandalf also had deep feelings for Lin Ming. It was also a feeling that had nothing to do with Lin Ming's current strength, regardless of whether Lin Ming was strong or weak. In Gandalf's heart, he was the one and only one. "Lin Ming, what's the level of your strength now?" Gandalf looked at Lin Ming and asked seriously. Lin Ming's strength had long surpassed his. Gandalf knew about it. However, at a glance, Lin Ming looked like he was only at level 10. "God tier," Lin Ming said but didn't elaborate. In fact, Lin Ming didn't say anything wrong when he said he was at God tier. "There should be a big difference in strength between your God tier and mine." Gandalf sighed and said. "It's just a little difference." Lin Ming chuckled and said. Right now, Lin Ming could crush Gandalf with just a finger. However, a teacher was a teacher. Although there were many cases where the student surpassed the teacher, seniority did exist. "Forget it. I'm satisfied that I could reach God tier. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I couldn't reach God tier for the rest of my life." Gandalf waved his hand and said, "How many people in the underworld have reached God tier?" Lin Ming asked Gandalf. "In the underworld, there's only one person who has reached God tier." Gandalf answered. "Who is that?" Lin Ming frowned and asked. "The guy in the center didn't just become a god tier. He also attained the intermediate god tier." Gandalf could not help but exclaim in admiration. This guy had advanced too quickly in the cultivation realm. Gandalf had also become a god tier expert by leaps and bounds. Thus he understood how difficult it was to advance in the cultivation realm after becoming a god-tier expert. According to Gandalf's cultivation speed, it would take at least several hundred years for him to reach the intermediate god tier from the beginner god tier. If it was the intermediate god tier to the advanced god tier, it would take at least 1,000 years. However, after reaching the god tier, this guy actually had also very quickly reached the intermediate god tier. Gandalf felt that it was incredible. Although that guy is always against us, his cultivation and talent are indeed something that we can't compare to. Gandalf sighed and said, "This kind of cultivation speed is indeed extremely monstrous." Lin Ming nodded and said, Lin Ming had become an expert of the peak of God tier. But now, he could suppress an expert of the peak of God tier with a finger. It was because he had a strong foundation. The God tier experts of the worlds back then had been forcefully exploited for their thousands of years of cultivation. All of them had been absorbed by Lin Ming, allowing Lin Ming to become an expert of the peak of God tier. And before that, Lin Ming's strength had already reached the beginner God tier. Therefore, Lin Ming also knew how much strength was needed to reach a higher realm. "I'll go and meet him," Lin Ming said. "Lin Ming," Gandalf suddenly called out to him. "What's the matter?" Lin Ming turned his head and asked. "In our world, there hasn't been a single God tier expert for so long. Now that the path to the God tier has been cleared, it's not easy for us to have 3 God tier experts. You should still let go wherever you can." Gandalf said to Lin Ming. "I understand." Lin Ming pondered for a moment, nodded, and said. Lin Ming knew what Gandalf was thinking. Although they had opposed each other back then, they were all pitiful people who had been trapped in the Holy Realm because the path to the God tier was blocked. Being a God tier expert, if I can resurrect all those pitiful people, I will show mercy, Lin Ming said before he left. When Lin Ming thought of those pitiful people, he was extremely furious in his heart. However, After reaching the god tier, he could now resurrect all these people who had been killed. Although it would consume a lot of energy and strength, Lin Ming would not care about it. If this guy could agree with Lin Ming would give face to his teacher and not wipe him out. Buzz. Lin Ming didn't even make any unnecessary movements. With just a thought, he directly arrived at the underworld. When Lin Ming arrived, no one in the underworld was aware of his arrival. Lin Ming spread his aura, and an old guy who was meditating quickly opened his eyes. Lin Ming. This god tier great elder was naturally extremely familiar with Lin Ming. It was because when he was about to awaken back then, it was Lin Ming who had appeared and sealed him once again. That devil has returned. The god tier great elder couldn't stand it anymore and stand up. Great elder, what's the matter? Beside the god tier great elder, the guy who had advanced to intermediate god tier also hurriedly stood up. Lin Ming is here, the god tier great elder said. He still dares to come. The guy immediately stood up and shouted angrily. At that time, he was suppressed by Lin Ming and didn't even have the strength to retaliate. In the end, he even became a general without an army. I'll go teach him a lesson. This guy actually directly went berserk and wanted to teach Lin Ming a lesson. Hold on. The god tier great elder quickly stopped him. What's wrong? After this guy became a god tier expert, he became arrogant. Moreover, he had advanced to the intermediate god tier realm. The demon god and others also had not appeared in this world. They remained as hermits to avoid breaking this balance. Therefore, except for this great elder, this guy didn't care about anyone else. If it weren't for this god tier great elder stopping them, this guy would have conquered the above ground world. This guy isn't simple, the god tier great elder said. Not simple? I want to see how not simple he is. At this moment, the god tier great elder actually couldn't hold him back. Don't bother yourself. I'm here to see you. Lin Ming's voice suddenly appeared in the space. Lin Ming. If Lin Ming's voice hadn't appeared, this guy wouldn't have sensed Lin Ming's presence. You've lived for so long, yet you're only at the god tier late stage? Looking at this god tier great elder, Lin Ming asked. As for that guy, Lin Ming didn't even look at him. I've been asleep for too long, and my strength has weakened quite a bit, the god tier great elder answered. In order to let you live, do you know how many people have died? Lin Ming looked at this god tier great elder and said coldly. What's the point of letting them live? If great elder resurrects, we can open up the path to the god tier and obtain a higher value. The guy next to him, who was courting death, said. Lin Ming's expression was ice cold as he looked at this guy who was courting death. A human who became a god tier? Lin Ming looked at this guy and said coldly. Why do you treat the lives of humans as nothing? Asked Lin Ming. Ordinary humans without power are nothing. This guy spoke again. Shut up. The god tier great elder beside him interrupted him. Great elder, am I wrong? This guy was still feeling proud of himself. If not that I had promised teacher, I would have destroyed you right now, said Lin Ming, whose expression was cold. Who do you think you are? You want to destroy me? The guy frowned and said. Great elder, let me teach this guy a lesson. The guy spoke loudly, gathering his strength. Now that he had become a god tier expert, he was indeed unruly. Moreover, he could feel the qualitative change in his strength. Right now he had no regard for anyone at all. Moreover, Lin Ming's aura was only at level 10. In the past, Lin Ming had a halo that allowed him to open up the path to the god tier, and a little more strength and trump cards. Now, in his view, with his god tier strength, he could definitely crush Lin Ming, regardless if there was anything strange about Lin Ming's strength. You're worthy? Lin Ming turned his head and looked at this reckless guy. With just a glance, Lin Ming had actually suppressed this guy on his original spot, causing him to be unable to move at all. You. Cold sweat broke out on this guy's face. Suppress. Lin Ming said coldly. And as Lin Ming spoke, the sound of this guy's bones shattering resounded throughout the entire space. The guy directly spat out a mouthful of blood, and he directly collapsed onto the ground, unable to resist at all. At this moment, he could only feel all the power in his body being sucked out. Boom! All of this guy's bones were shattered into powder. However, after becoming a god tier expert, his life force had become extremely powerful. Therefore, Lin Ming did not go back on his promise to Gandalf. Senior, please stop. The god-tier great elder spoke loudly at this moment. The moment Lin Ming made his move, the god-tier great elder had known that he was no match for him. Moreover, against Lin Ming, his strength was insignificant. I won't kill you because before I came here, I had promised teacher. Otherwise, based on what you said just now, I'm afraid you won't be in this form. If Lin Ming hadn't promised Gandalf, this guy's soul would probably have been wiped out directly by Lin Ming. However, you have to promise me one thing. Lin Ming looked at this guy and said coldly, Yes, senior, please say it. This guy had turned into a pile of mud, and the one who helped him to agree was the god-tier great elder. Use the god-tier means to resurrect everyone you've sacrificed. If you miss out on anyone, I'll use your life to pay for it. Lin Ming looked at the god-tier great elder and said, Yes, we understand. The god-tier great elder quickly nodded. We will complete this task in the shortest time possible. The god-tier great elder added, Also, because you have a mouth full of nonsense, I have to give you some punishment. Lin Ming looked at the guy who treated human lives like grass and said with a cold expression, Senior, please forgive. The god-tier great elder moved forward again. He wanted to beg Lin Ming's forgiveness. You're not a good person either. I don't want to make things difficult for you. Get lost. With just one sentence from Lin Ming, this god-tier great elder felt his body lose control and fall to the ground. Only now did this god-tier great elder realize the gap between him and Lin Ming. If Lin Ming wanted to kill him, he could probably do it with just a thought. I've taken away the power of a small realm from you. This is considered giving face to my teacher. Lin Ming spoke, and just with a raise of his hand, this guy discovered to his horror that his realm had directly fallen to the beginner god tier. Thank you for showing mercy, senior. At this moment, the great elder of the god tier said loudly. He knew that if Lin Ming had wanted to, he could have easily crippled this guy. Don't talk so much nonsense. Get lost. Remember what I said. Within 3 days, if you miss out on anyone, I will use your life to make up for it. With that said, Lin Ming disappeared from where he stood. Yes, yes, yes. The god-tier great elder quickly nodded. He wanted to quickly send away Lin Ming, the god of pestilence. Lin Ming was too terrifying. The god-tier great elder sighed. This guy had encountered an undeserved calamity. If it weren't for his blabbering, he probably wouldn't have been suppressed to such a state by Lin Ming, and he wouldn't have been deprived of his power by Lin Ming. However, now that things had already happened, they could only accept it. The god-tier great elder moved forward, wanting to help this guy recover. However, Lin Ming's suppressive force was still there. It directly caused the god-tier great elder to spit out blood from the rebound of this force. Remember what I said. At this moment, Lin Ming's voice appeared once again. As Lin Ming's voice sounded, the suppressive force on this guy's body completely disappeared. As the suppressive force disappeared, this guy's body also directly recovered. After all, a god tier was indeed a god tier, so the recovery speed of his body wasn't something random. He had already reached the point where he would neither die nor be destroyed. This is too terrifying. At this moment, this guy's face was pale as he spoke. Now, because the strength of his body had been stripped away, his body had become extremely weak. Hurry up and complete the task. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll suffer as well. The god-tier great elder frowned and said, After all, I was the one who vouched for you just now. The god-tier great elder spoke again. Right now he was extremely terrified of Lin Ming. Lin Ming really had the power to kill him at will. But now, my power. In just an instant, this guy became dispirited. All of his arrogance had shattered. Stop talking nonsense, I'll help you. The god-tier great elder frowned and thought. You can't even save your life now. So what are you talking about? Yes. This guy had finally accepted his fate and stood up. The god-tier great elder began to resurrect the innocent people they had sacrificed. And they were only given 3 days. At this moment, villagers of many originally abandoned villages had suddenly resurrected. And all the villagers who had sacrificed felt as if they had had a nightmare. They did not know how they resurrected. At this moment, Lin Ming was looking at the entire underground world. He suddenly thought of an idea. The underworld was still as dark as ever. Of course, Lin Ming wasn't just talking about light. Only the descendants of Sage Realm experts and God-tier experts could survive in the cities of the underworld. As for others, they were all in the villages. But other than the cities, there was no spirit energy or magic elements in other places. It could be said that there was no way to cultivate in the villages. These villagers were born as slaves. The villagers who were not slaves were even more pitiful. They had to guard against the attacks of the magical beasts day and night. And these ordinary people were powerless against the magical beasts. They could only pray that these magical beasts had a smaller appetite. As for the people in the cities, facing the plunder of magic elements, their cultivation speed was extremely fast. However, they completely looked down on these villagers. As a result, these villagers had no one to protect them. I want to open up this world, Lin Ming said to himself. The two worlds are separated by the remnant power of the God-tier battle. Now, I only need to wipe out this remnant power, so that the two worlds can combine into one. In the future, there will no longer be the above-ground world or the underground world. There will only be one world, Lin Ming said. Lin Ming was now in this world, so the people in the underworld did not dare to act rashly. However, there would always be a time when Lin Ming would leave. If Lin Ming wanted to do something, he had to do it well. He could only do it for abundant benefits. Senior Pangu, came Lin Ming's voice. As Lin Ming spoke, Pangu's figure appeared beside him. As the guardian of this world, Pangu could be said to have complete control over this world. Therefore, as long as Lin Ming sent out a thought, Pangu would appear. What's the matter? After Pangu appeared, he asked, I want to open up the heaven and earth. Do you think it's possible? Lin Ming asked. I guess that the first thing you would do after you came back would be to open up the two worlds. This world was one to begin with. Now it feels like it's separated by yin and yang. I didn't do it because of some reasons. If you're willing, I agree. Pangu nodded and said, You didn't do it because of some reasons? Lin Ming frowned and asked curiously. Yes, but you don't have any scruples. Pangu nodded and said. Lin Ming saw that Pangu didn't want to tell him the reasons. He didn't force him. Then I will begin to do it, Lin Ming said. The reason why these two worlds were separated was that the battle had caused the plates on land to rise and fall. In the end, they became two worlds, and the god-tier power within them had caused the two worlds to be completely isolated, and they were unable to fuse into one again. Pangu opened his mouth to explain why two worlds had appeared. Lin Ming just nodded. Of course. He knew the reason why the underworld was separated from the above-ground world. But now, Pangu opened his mouth was just to remind Lin Ming how to merge the two worlds. I'm going to start, Lin Ming said to Pangu. Help me to defend and guard. Don't hurt the innocent people. Lin Ming looked at Pangu and said, Don't worry about that. We have plenty of people. Pangu chuckled and said. As Pangu spoke, a few familiar auras appeared beside Lin Ming. Lin Ming, I knew you could do it. A voice familiar to Lin Ming appeared. Senior Demon God. Lin Ming cupped his fists and greeted him. The help that the Demon God had given Lin Ming was the greatest. From the very beginning, when Lin Ming's strength was extremely weak, the Demon God had been by Lin Ming's side, including Lin Ming's divine artifacts. The stupa. All of them belonged to the Demon God. And from when he first became a dual-element mage, it was also because of the appearance of the Demon God. The Demon God had also contributed significantly to Lin Ming's ability to control the power of chaos. It was also the Demon God who thought of the path of chaos. Although the Demon God had his own thoughts for the sake of his own recovery, he did his best for Lin Ming. He didn't hide anything from Lin Ming. From the beginning, I have thought that you are amazing, little brat. The God of Fire also walked forward and laughed. Seniors, you came at the right time. I came back because I want to return what belongs to you, Lin Ming said. As Lin Ming spoke, stupa, longevity monument, the heaven and earth diagram of diagram spirit, the blood sea wheels and so on appeared. These divine artifacts are still very useful to you. Please don't decline. After all, these things originally belonged to you, Lin Ming said. There's no need. These are gifts to you. We won't take back what we've given away. The Demon God was the first to shake his head. That's right, the God of Fire also nodded. The great sage diagram spirit and the others also nodded. Although these divine artifacts have accompanied me for so long, they really aren't of much use to me now. It's better to let them return to their old master's sides and unleash their remaining power. After all of you have already resurrected. Lin Ming waved his hand and said, Go. Lin Ming waved his hand. The demon god and the others originally wanted to reject him again, but they suddenly realized that they could not stop the divine artifacts that Lin Ming pushed over. The divine artifacts floated in front of them, but they could not move them at all. Therefore, they could only accept the divine artifacts that Lin Ming returned to them, since they could not reject him at all. Most importantly, they could feel Lin Ming's current power. It made them understand what Lin Ming said was not a lie. Although these divine artifacts weren't completely useless to Lin Ming, they weren't of much help to him. Everyone, thank you so much for the time in the past, Lin Ming said to the artifact spirits. The artifact spirits also couldn't bear to bow deeply to Lin Ming. I'm willing to break the contract with Gandalf's artifact. I am willing to break the contract with the Vermilion Bird's divine artifact. I am willing. Following Lin Ming's words, even the contracts of the divine artifacts that the god-tier experts hard to come across were broken by Lin Ming. Lin Ming did this to thank the seniors for taking care of him. Moreover, these divine artifacts were indeed not much of a help to him. In the future, if Lin Ming were to really enter a battle, Lin Ming's such strength, even the longevity monument, which was the head of the defensive divine artifacts, would not be able to withstand it. There was a reason why Lin Ming had returned the items to their original owners. Seniors, please help me protect the humans of the two worlds from harm, Lin Ming said. Okay, the demon god and the others nodded. As for the matter of making the divine artifacts recognize their original owners again, they weren't in a hurry. God-tier Great Elder, Lin Ming spoke coldly. Following Lin Ming's words, the God-tier Great Elder appeared beside him. The God-tier Great Elder looked at the people behind Lin Ming and frowned. Panicking. Back then, he was at the bottom among the God-tier existences. Although there weren't many God-tier experts, to begin with, the demon god's power then had already reached the peak of the God-tier. The great sage was an existence that could challenge the emperor and his many people. The god of fire and the others were also very powerful. Although the diagram spirit had only been in the advanced God-tier then, he was proficient in arrays and was no inferior against experts at the peak of the God-tier. As such, the God-tier Great Elder was the weakest existence. With the appearance of all the God-tier experts at the same time now, the God-tier Great Elder, who was the strongest in the underworld, felt as if he could not even lift his head. 3 days have passed. How is your progress? Lin Ming looked at the God-tier Great Elder and asked. It's all done. All the innocent people have been resurrected. At this moment, the God-tier Great Elder didn't dare to dawdle and hurriedly spoke. This was because he knew that even though Lin Ming had let them off for the sake of Gandalf, if those with fiery tempers like the god of fire and the demon god were to learn how he had carried out the resurrections, they would definitely make a move and heavily injure him. Come and help me protect the humans here as well. Lin Ming nodded and didn't say anything else. This was because, with a sweep of his divine consciousness, Lin Ming found that the God-tier Great Elder had indeed accomplished what he had requested. Since Lin Ming had promised as such, he would definitely fulfill it. Lin Ming, the power inside is extremely complicated, and there is also the curse power as well as great karma. You must be careful. At this moment, Panku stepped forward and said to Lin Ming. Okay, I got it. Lin Ming nodded. The other powers like the so-called curse power, complicated powers, and so on, did not pose any threat to Lin Ming. Lin Ming could easily resolve any of them. However, the power of karma was different. Karma operated such that no matter how powerful one was, if one came into contact with the power of karma, one would suffer a backlash. This posed a certain threat to Lin Ming. However, Lin Ming didn't think much of it. After all, he had plenty of ways to resolve the threat. Fuse, Lin Ming said coldly. As Lin Ming spoke, the barrier between the two worlds began to rapidly dissolve. The two worlds began to fuse. When completely fused, the two worlds would become larger. From then on, the two worlds would become one. Boom! Suddenly, a wave of power attacked Lin Ming. This was the attack power left behind here. Now that Lin Ming was neutralizing it, it attacked him. Chaos! Lin Ming snorted coldly. With this, the wave of power was directly neutralized by him with the power of chaos. As Lin Ming continued the fusion, more and more power attacked him at the same time. Lin Ming didn't dodge at all. He used the power of chaos to neutralize all of them. After all, there were still billions of beings behind Lin Ming. In the first place, Lin Ming was fusing the two worlds to help the billions of underworld beings escape from the sea of suffering. As such, he couldn't possibly allow his fusion to cause them more harm. At this moment, the Sage Realm experts in both worlds who hadn't reached the god tier stood up in fear. They could feel the entire world tremble as if the end of the world had arrived. Gandalf, the Sage Realm elf, and the fellow from the underworld knew the reason for such a phenomenon. They couldn't believe that Lin Ming could do such a feat. After all, in their opinion, even if they wanted to travel between the two worlds, they needed the help of a raise. Furthermore, because the world was split into two, some cultivations would indeed become more difficult. However, some were delighted while some were distressed. At this moment, some families of the underworld naturally began to panic. This was because they had been in power for a very long time. They had taken advantage of themselves being in power to accumulate all kinds of wealth, cultivation resources, and so on. Although Lin Ming's actions wouldn't cause them to decline straight away from the beginning, it would cause their forces to slowly disintegrate. They had attempted to store all the spirit energy in their territories, but now, it seemed that doing so wouldn't work at all. After all, Lin Ming hated such actions the most. With Lin Ming's appearance, it was as if all the resources were being redistributed. The underworld families believed that even after the two worlds merged into one, their territories would probably remain, but all the arrays in their territories that were used to absorb spirit energy and magic elements would be completely erased. The long time that they had been in power for was destined to be broken. In the future, cultivation geniuses would also come from villages of the underworld. To begin with, the villagers were already full of complaints towards the various families. It was just that they didn't have the strength to fight back. Now that Lin Ming had made a move to help the villagers were able to build up their strength, there would definitely be many geniuses in the future. As such, the various families started to make tight plans. Lin Ming naturally wouldn't be so meticulous. Lin Ming only needed to change the social environment. With the change in the social environment, even if the families were to continue to be in power, they would change with the environment sooner or later. With Lin Ming's move, more changes would also appear. Fuse. The further he was in the fusion process, the greater the resistance that Lin Ming felt. Buzz. Lin Ming felt dizzy. Lin Ming knew that the cursed power had appeared at this moment. Lin Ming frowned and raised his hand. Humph. To think a mere cursed power dares to behave atrociously before me. Lin Ming snorted coldly. With this, the cursed power was completely dissipated. If such cursed power had been placed on the demon god and the others, it would have been difficult for them to completely eradicate it within 100 years. But in front of Lin Ming, it was not even worth mentioning. Kill. Lin Ming spoke coldly once again. With Lin Ming's words, all the cursed power within the barrier was completely eradicated. Just how much has Lin Ming grown? The demon god frowned. The current Lin Ming gave him a terrifying feeling. Wasn't Lin Ming's power a little too strong? So many curses. Yet Lin Ming was able to eradicate them all in an instant. On top of that, the speed at which the barrier was being removed was a little too fast. Doom! As Lin Ming removed the barrier, the two worlds began to shake violently. The shaking was so intense that even the Tier 6 or Tier 7 body cultivators would find it hard to keep on their feet, let alone the ordinary villagers. They thought that the world was about to be destroyed. At this moment, the demon god and the others made a move at the same time, stabilizing the two worlds. Although they were not as strong as Lin Ming, it was fortunate that they had an advantage in numbers. Boom! Finally, the barrier between the two worlds was completely removed. At this moment, the two worlds began to fuse. The power the world fusion brought with it was something that even many god-tier experts could not handle. It was easy for them to destroy something. On the other hand, it was quite difficult to repair something. On top of that, many lives needed their protection. As such, they needed to divert a lot of attention to protect these trillions of lives. In addition, these were the lives of two worlds and most of them were ordinary people that weren't even above Tier 6. At this moment, Lin Ming, who had removed the barrier between the two worlds, had wanted to help the demon god and the others to stabilize the fusion of the two worlds, but a strange power quickly covered his body. Lin Ming, this is the most troublesome power of karma. You should focus on it first. Leave the rest to me. Pangu's voice sounded in Lin Ming's ears. This sentence enabled Lin Ming to focus entirely on removing the power of karma. After all, someone who could stand on equal footing with the Heavenly Emperor, and even invoke the Heavenly Emperor's fear and admiration, must be very powerful. Lin Ming could trust Pangu. He closed his eyes, and many bloody scenes appeared in his mind. Of course, there were also heartwarming scenes, as well as scenes of mutual deception. The separation of the two worlds involved too many things in the first place, so much so that even Pangu did not want to do anything about the separation. Now that Lin Ming had made a move to remove the barrier, all the things involved would thus be forced on him. This was all the karma of a world being separated into two. The pressure it had on one was even greater than that given off by the world crystal in Wu Dong's world. Lin Ming. When Pangu turned around, he saw Lin Ming's soul body shrinking rapidly. Lin Ming was so powerful, yet he was still unable to resist. Pangu knew that the power of karma was very difficult to resist, but he did not expect it to be so monstrous. Lin Ming was a soul body. It could be said that he was invulnerable to all poisons, and he could pay no heed to many attacks. However, under the power of karma, it was still as if he was being defeated in an instant. At this moment, Lin Ming's eyes were tight shut. The truth was not what Pangu had imagined. This was the first time Lin Ming felt the power of karma. As such, he wanted to gain a thorough feeling of it. Lin Ming was very interested in the power of karma that could directly attack his soul and couldn't be gotten rid of nor neutralized. Therefore, the first thing Lin Ming did was to let the power of karma attack him. He didn't use any means to defend himself. That was why he had looked haggard in an instant. However, Lin Ming also learned at the moment that if he tried to defend himself, he would probably have to expend quite some energy. The power of karma was indeed terrifying. The reason why Pangu did not merge the two worlds was probably partially because of the power of karma. Now I have mastered the power of chaos, and it includes all the magic elements. But I can't have the power of karma. What a pity. Lin Ming couldn't help but say. At this moment, he had a new idea. Since he had finished merging the two worlds into one, the work of stabilizing the results could be left to Pangu. Therefore, he might as well comprehend the power of karma here. If I can grasp this power of karma, I can gain a great boost. Lin Ming could not help but say this. The power of karma could drive a god-tier expert into an extremely cornered situation. If he could grasp it now, he would not even need to make a move to attack his opponent in the future. He only needed to use the power of karma, and the other party would immediately kneel and beg for mercy. That being said, since the power of karma could have such a monstrous power, it was naturally impossible for it to be grasped so easily. After all, the power of karma exceeded the power of all the magic elements. The power of karma had no regard for one's tier, or whether one was a soul or physical. As long as it attacked, one would be contaminated. To think it was comparable to the power of chaos that Lin Ming had spent so much effort to master. Furthermore, the power of karma was even harder to resist and defend against. It was the same as Lin Ming's soul body in the sense that it could ignore the many defenses of the opponent. Fuse. Lin Ming closed his eyes. He was trying to fuse the terrifying power of karma into his soul. As Lin Ming forced the fusion, he felt as if his soul was burning. At this moment, Lin Ming's soul body shrunk even more, and he even felt a sense of exhaustion. I didn't expect the power of karma of fusing two worlds into one to be so great. Pangu frowned and said from the side. Great God Pangu, will Lin Ming be okay? The demon god asked Pangu anxiously. Lin Ming didn't use his power to erase the power of karma. Instead, he's trying to forcefully fuse it. This means that although the power of karma seems terrifying and Lin Ming is also injured by it, it can't cause too much damage to him. Pangu said. However, if the power of karma were to appear on any of you, I'm afraid you will only be fraught with grim possibilities. Pangu added. What he didn't say was that if the power of karma had been directed at him, he would also suffer some injuries. At this moment, under everyone's nervous gazes, Lin Ming reached out his palm. Come out. Lin Ming said coldly. As Lin Ming spoke, the power of karma appeared on his palm. Wasn't Lin Ming too powerful? To think he could force the power of karma out of his body. Since I can't forcefully fuse it, I'll have to use another method. Lin Ming looked at the power of karma on his palm and said, since it was a difficult path, he might as well take another one. The power of karma indeed dealt too much damage. Besides, if Lin Ming forcefully fused it, not only would it cause some damage to himself, but it would also be impossible for him to disintegrate the power of karma. Now that Lin Ming had forced the power of karma out of his soul body, he could let go of many of his worries. As for Pangu, he was surprised to see that Lin Ming could force the power of karma out of his soul body. After all, as long as one came into contact with the power of karma, one simply couldn't get rid of it. But now, when Lin Ming wanted to forcefully fuse the power of karma, he could do so. And when he wanted to force the power of karma out of his soul body, he could do so as well. His being able to do such things so casually made people wonder if the power of karma was as powerful as they had thought. Split, Lin Ming said coldly. He was going to disintegrate the power of karma completely. After that, he was going to transform the power into its essence bit by bit, then comprehend, absorb and control it, being something that could even make Pangu feel fear. The power of karma was naturally not so easy to control. Even the disintegrating part in the start was extremely hard. After all, if there was a cause there would be an effect. They simply could not be separated. This was the power of laws. As such, Lin Ming's disintegrating power did not have any effect in the beginning. On the contrary, the power of karma started to rebound. Lin Ming's surroundings were crazily devoured. Retreat! Pangu frowned and shouted. The people around hurriedly retreated. They naturally did not dare let themselves be devoured and dissipated by the power of karma. At this moment, the backlash of the power of karma was like a black hole, devouring everything around it, no matter what it was. On top of that, the black hole's area of effect was getting bigger and bigger. Lin Ming frowned. He naturally could not allow things to continue developing like this. Suppress. Lin Ming coldly spoke. With this, the power of chaos appeared and enveloped Lin Ming. As the power of chaos enveloped him, the black hole could no longer expand. Instead, it started exploding within. At this moment, the power of karma seemed to have come alive. The power of chaos took on the fierce attacks. However, Lin Ming did not budge at all. The shield formed by the power of chaos was also as stable as Mount Tai. Everyone around heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. If the power of karma continued to devour the surroundings, they would not be able to resist at all. Split. Lin Ming spoke coldly once again. However, when Lin Ming tried to use the power of disintegration again, the reaction the power of karma had was as if cold water had been poured over hot oil. It exploded once again. Even Lin Ming couldn't help but frown when he felt the power. At the same time, his heart was filled with excitement, since the power of karma was so hard for him to subdue and control. Once he mastered it, it would definitely be one of his trump cards. As the sound of the explosions grew louder and louder while the power of the explosions grew stronger, a loud explosion sounded with a boom. Huff! Lin Ming exhaled a breath of essence Kai. To think the power of the explosion had caused him to suffer a small injury, Lin Ming chuckled. And the thought of subjugating the power of karma grew even stronger in his heart. Suppress! Lin Ming said coldly. Following his words, the power of chaos slowly shrank from its original range. In the end, the range of the power was shrunk to the size of Lin Ming's palm. Lin Ming clenched his palm. The power of karma was like a cat that had been subdued and was rapidly turning into a ball. Karma, tisk tisk, not bad. Lin Ming laughed out loud. As he laughed, the power of karma directly dissipated into his palm. This, Pangu couldn't help but take a step forward. If his eyes hadn't played a fool on him, Lin Ming didn't forcefully absorb the power of karma. He didn't continue to disintegrate it either, but directly let the power of karma disappear into his palm. Pangu knew that the more this was so, the more it proved that Lin Ming had mastered the power of karma, to put down the killing knife and become a Buddha on the spot. This is karma. To have hands are stained with blood and be unpardonable. This is also karma. Karma is not power, not reincarnation, but the human heart. Lin Ming closed his eyes and said. At this moment, Lin Ming suddenly had enlightenment about the power of karma. Now, are you still willing to separate the two worlds and make the innocent people in the underworld suffer because of your actions? Lin Ming looked at the demon god and the others and asked. Naturally, no. The demon god and the others hurriedly said. Very well. As for you, are you willing to let the entire world sink into darkness for some so-called family benefits? Lin Ming looked at the god-tier great elder and asked. This. For a moment, the god-tier great elder didn't know how to answer. This was because his selfishness had already become a habit. I'll answer for you. This isn't karma. There won't be any karma on you, only retribution. With your strength, you may be able to resist it for a little. But what about your descendants? The family you've established is extremely prosperous now. However, it won't be long before many good-for-nothings will appear. You have taken all of it for yourself, and your descendants will have nothing. Lin Ming looked at the god-tier great elder and said, "Forget it. I'm too lazy to talk to you." Lin Ming turned his head and said coldly. Lin Ming's words caused the god-tier great elder to break out in cold sweat. Lin Ming was right. Since he had taken all the resources for himself, his descendants could only be good-for-nothings. Stop. Lin Ming stretched out his hand and said. With Lin Ming's words, the world that so many god-tier experts were unable to completely stabilize immediately stabilized. This is also the power of karma. As he said this, the two worlds fused completely. Lin Ming's power had once again undergone a qualitative change. Look, this is the real world. Lin Ming looked at this world and said, "Yes, this is the real world." The demon god nodded. Now, all the foul atmosphere had been completely wiped out by Lin Ming when he fused the two worlds. The world-class spirit gathering array in every city had also been directly wiped out by Lin Ming. On top of that, the underworld and above-ground world had been randomly merged. In other words, two villages, who knew nothing about each other in the above-ground world and the underground, might find themselves to have become neighboring villages. One might have originally been in a desolate place, but now might find oneself in a bustling area. Lin Ming's actions had completely disrupted the control of the original forces. By doing so, he had also made the families who had been taking chances know that their plans had been in vain. Now, it was a complete reshuffling of the cards. No matter how strong one's family was in the past, people who could resist them now existed. Now, after Lin Ming had completely reshuffled the cards, he could put things right once and for all. None of the families, Sage Realm experts, and so on could completely control the ordinary humans anymore. Furthermore, not just the people in the city who could cultivate and have a chance at becoming an expert now. Everyone in the villages had the possibility of becoming an expert as well. Therefore, it would be extremely difficult for the families to continue suppressing and controlling the ordinary villagers. In addition, Pengdu had always felt sorry for the innocent villagers. It was only due to the various karma and various reasons that he hadn't made a move. Now that Lin Ming had helped him do what he couldn't, he would definitely compensate the innocent villagers in the dark. This day was later known as World Light Day. Lin Ming looked at the entire world, and a smile appeared on his face. Seniors, there is still a higher path to take after becoming a god-tier expert. With such cultivation, you should cherish your days and stop forming factions or anything like that. Lin Ming looked at the god-tier experts and said. The meaning behind Lin Ming's words was very clear. If a god-tier expert were to form a faction, too many people would be suppressed. After all, there were only a few god-tier experts in the entire world. Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, the demon god and the others understood the meaning behind his words and immediately nodded. Other than our descendants, we won't recruit or gather anyone else, the demon god said. With my fiery temper, no one is willing to stay by my side anyway, the god of fire also said at this moment. Lin Ming only smiled and did not speak again. Seniors, my wish has been fulfilled. If there's nothing else, I'll go and settle some other matters. Lin Ming cupped his fists and said, All right. The god-tier experts all nodded and disappeared from on the spot. Let's go to the place where you were back then. After saying this, Lin Ming brought Ernest Lin to the empire where she had been. Is this the place? Lin Ming looked at this familiar place. However, things had changed and the people were different. Tell your family head to hurry up and get out here. Lin Ming said. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk about our family head like that? Lin Ming's words caused the two guards to shout coldly. Their family was currently the strongest family in the entire empire. Even the emperor of the empire was respectful to their family. To think a reckless fellow that had appeared out of nowhere dared to make a ruckus here. Although they were still in shock from the shaking in the world just now, Lin Ming seemed only to be in tier 10. So they would never have thought this was the fellow who had fused the two worlds into one. I advise you not to court death. One of the guards wore a fierce expression as he spoke coldly. Men. Although he was saying this, he already had the intention to kill. Tusk tusk. Lin Ming couldn't help but snort coldly. Tram. Lin Ming didn't have the patience to continue talking to them, and simply spoke coldly. Following Lin Ming's words, everyone who rushed forward was frozen on the spot. With Lin Ming's current strength, it would be as easy as ABC for him to kill them. Even Ernest Lin would be able to kill them easily. However, upon reaching a certain tier, one would just be lazy to kill an ant. Coming here now, Lin Ming had never thought of just exterminating the entire family. The people of the family looked at Lin Ming in horror. Could it be that Lin Ming was a Sage Realm expert? Otherwise, how could he have the power to stop them with a single sentence? Who is it? Sensing the fluctuation of power, the chief appeared. Lin Ming had seen the chief before. He was the chief of the Bohinya family. Back then, the Bohinya family had wanted to annex Ernest Lin's family. However, at that time this guy was only a tier 10. To think he had grown to the Sage Realm now. It's you. The Bohinya family's chief had a very deep impression of Lin Ming. Seeing Lin Ming appear, he frowned. Ernest Lin, aren't you? Seeing Ernest Lin, who was behind Lin Ming, the fellow became even more agitated. He suddenly remembered that Lin Ming's grandmaster had become a god-tier expert. Were you resurrected by Sir Gandalf? The fellow looked at Ernest Lin and couldn't help but tremble as he asked. Although he had become a Sage Realm expert, which had made him the most powerful in their empire, the rules have changed now. Now, it was the world of the god tiers. Sage Realm experts could only live in the shadow of the god tiers. If Gandalf made a move on their behalf, their family wouldn't be able to put up any resistance. If your grandmaster had come, I could have only obediently waited for death. However, since you're the only one here, I still have a chance to live, the fellow said while looking at Lin Ming, who seemed to only be at tier 10. He even had the thought of taking Lin Ming hostage in exchange for a chance to live. Tusk tusk, Lin Ming couldn't help but sneer. At this moment, cold sweat broke out on the face of the Bohinya family's chief. The fellow revealed a terrified expression. The feeling of being controlled made him aware that his life was no longer in his hands. You've also reached the god tier? The fellow spoke with great difficulty and said something that he didn't want to believe. Please don't hurt my clansmen. He finally admitted defeat. Ernest Lin, what did he do back then? Lin Ming turned his head, looked at Ernest Lin, and asked. Speaking of which, the only thing he did was kill me? Ernest Lin couldn't help but sneer. However, at that time, almost everyone in my family had become his people. I don't see anyone who belongs to my family today, Ernest Lin said. Back then, she had succeeded in becoming the chief of her family with the help of Lin Ming. However, after Lin Ming left, the fellow had once again used methods to get most of the people in Ernest Lin's family to his side. At that time, the chief of the Bohinya family had only killed Ernest Lin. However, those who didn't truly submit to the chief of the Bohinya family then were all eliminated by various methods as well. Since Ernest Lin has said so, I have nothing more to discuss with you. Those who aren't on your side in your family can escape with their lives. Lin Ming sneered and said to the chief of the Bohinya family. You. At this moment, the chief of the Bohinya family was completely flustered. Who dares to trespass into the Bohinya family? At this moment, a cold shout sounded. Great Elder. The chief of the Bohinya family once again felt lucky in his heart. He didn't know Lin Ming's current realm, but the Great Elder had truly reached the peak of the Sage Realm and was just a step away from entering the God tier. If there was anyone who was next in line to become a God tier expert, it would be the Great Elder. Oh? Lin Ming turned around with a smile and looked at the Great Elder. With just a glance from Lin Ming, the Great Elder couldn't help but shudder. With just that glance, the Great Elder knew that his family had encountered a tough opponent. May I know what order Senior has for coming to the Bohinya family? The Sage Realm Great Elder was a shrewd person. After just receiving a signal from the glance that the other party was dangerous, he immediately became respectful. What orders? Lin Ming sneered. Your family's chief killed my woman. I'm only here to help her repay your family. There shouldn't be any problems with that, right? Lin Ming asked. How is this possible? Our family has a strict no-killing order. The Great Elder frowned and said. This has something to do with my cultivation. Because I cultivate the methods of Buddhism, I've always been extremely wary of many things. I'm especially wary of killing, the Great Elder said. This was also the reason why the Emperor trusted the fellow so much. You don't kill doesn't mean that your clansmen won't kill. Ernest Lin snorted and said. If any of my clansmen have killed, There is no need for you to make a move. I will personally punish him, the Great Elder quickly said. Lin Ming looked at the Great Elder of the Bohinya family. Although he merely seemed like an ant to him, the ant didn't seem to be lying. Besides, the light of Buddha on the Great Elder couldn't be hidden. Thus, Lin Ming didn't make a move for the time being to eliminate the guy. Was it really you who made a move? The Great Elder looked at his grandson and asked. At this moment, his arm couldn't help but tremble. It was me. The chief of the Bohinya family nodded, not giving an explanation. Good, good. The Great Elder of the Bohinya family laughed loudly, then frowned and said, You ruined my cultivation. Wait. Lin Ming frowned. After getting the answer, his intention of making a move disappeared instead. What's wrong? Ernest Lin asked. Something strange. There's another aura on the chief of the Bohinya family, Lin Ming said. Another aura. Ernest Lin and the Great Elder of the Bohinya family frowned at the same time and asked. He probably couldn't control himself back then. Though he can be considered a man. Although he couldn't control himself, he didn't try explaining his actions. Lin Ming said, Come out. Lin Ming pointed at the chief of the Bohinya family. The chief of the Bohinya family could only feel his vision turn black, and a wisp of black smoke immediately emerged, then quickly disappeared from the chief's body. This is. Ernest Lin now believed Lin Ming's words. To think the chief of the Bohinya family was controlled by someone. Whose aura is this? Ernest Lin hurriedly asked. At this moment, the Great Elder of the Bohinya family moved forward as well. No matter what, his grandson did not have to die. This was already the best blessing. After all, this was his only relative. Who exactly was it? To have poisoned my grandson. I will cut him into 10,000 pieces. The Sage Realm Great Elder shouted. You're only at the Sage Realm, yet you want to cut him to pieces? The gap between you and your opponent is just too big. Lin Ming said. This who was the person who cast poisoned my grandson? Please tell me, senior. The Great Elder quickly asked Lin Ming for advice. From Lin Ming's words, he had at least understood that the person who had controlled his grandson was at least at the god tier. The Thunder God. Lin Ming spoke coldly, following Lin Ming's words. Both Ernest Lin and the Sage Realm Great Elder frowned at the same time. One was shocked, while the other was dazed. The Thunder God was Ernest Lin's elder brother. Furthermore, their relationship was extremely good. To think the person who controlled the Bohinya family's chief to kill off her reincarnation was her elder brother. As for the Great Elder, he had no idea who the Thunder God was. But judging from the name, he could tell the other party was definitely a god-tier expert. He was clueless as to why a god-tier expert would control his tier 10 grandson to kill Ernest Lin though. Your brother's actions were indeed very discreet. He was extremely careful. However, if one doesn't want people to know, it's best not to do it. No matter how careful he was, his actions would still leave a mark. Lin Ming said. My brother, how could he? Ernest Lin said in a panic. She never thought that her brother would make a move against her. It's hard to tell what's going on in the minds of others. That being said, I will help you find out everything that had happened. Lin Ming said. Since I have wronged you, I will give you some compensation. Lin Ming pointed at the unconscious chief of the Bohinya family and said. In the beginning, Lin Ming never expected that the Thunder God would attack Ernest Lin. Fortunately, he had sensed that something was wrong just now and didn't attack. Lin Ming never looked at anyone from a superior angle. As such, he would now compensate the chief of the Bohinya family. With a point, a streak of power went into the body of the chief of the Bohinya family. With this, the chief came to, and he could feel his strength growing rapidly. The obstacles that he had to face to break through were all defenseless against Lin Ming's strength. Crash! The chief of the Bohinya family could hear the sound of something cracking in his body. At the same time, a large number of impurities appeared outside his body. With this, he directly advanced to the advanced Sage Realm from his initial cultivation of the beginner Sage Realm, where his cultivation wasn't even stable yet. Thank you, senior. The chief of the Bohinya family kowtowed to Lin Ming. Lin Ming glanced at Ernest Lin and disappeared from the spot with her. When I accompany you back to the void, I will help you resolve this matter. Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and said, Forget it. Let's just forget about this matter. Ernest Lin shook her head. No matter what, that was her brother. If Lin Ming made a move, the Thunder God would definitely suffer. After all, There was a huge gap between the Thunder God and Lin Ming. Lin Ming could take the Thunder God's life with just one move. Ernest Lin just couldn't understand why her brother would make a move against her. After all, their brother-sister relationship in daily life wasn't fake at all. If he had no other choice but to do so, I can let him off. But if he did it out of his personal feelings, then I'll definitely make a move. Lin Ming snorted coldly. No one could make a move against his woman, not even her own brother. The reason behind this indeed needs to be clarified. Ernest Lin nodded and said, since he could make a move against her, others might suffer from his attacks as well. Compared to the Heavenly Emperor's faction, the New Gods faction was extremely weak. If there was a civil war, the faction would be even worse, and Ernest Lin would not allow such a thing to happen. Wait till we return to the void, Lin Ming said. Lin Ming did not want to go back to the void just yet. After all, there were still some things in this world that Lin Ming had sentimental feelings for. Besides, it would currently still be extremely difficult for the Thunder God to retaliate against the old fellow. At this moment, as Lin Ming merged the two worlds into one, some chaotic matters naturally appeared. He wanted to resolve these matters. Lin Ming shuttled through the various empires and issued many decrees, making it so that the people of each empire could live a prosperous and contented life. There were also some matters that the empires themselves couldn't resolve. Lin Ming stepped in and resolved them all. Unknowingly, Lin Ming's body was once again blessed by the power of faith. The power of faith this time was extremely dense and pure. Furthermore, it was very difficult for Lin Ming to transfer this power of faith to Ernest Lin. In the end, he simply left it be. After all, this was an extremely good blessing everyone in this world had for him. Lin Ming, suddenly, a voice appeared in Lin Ming's ear. Senior Pangu. When Lin Ming heard this voice, he naturally knew who it was. What requests does Senior Pangu have? Pangu and Lin Ming were both people who didn't talk much. If nothing was the matter, they simply wouldn't come over for a small talk. As such, since Pangu had come to Lin Ming's side, it was most certainly because he had something he wanted. Since you asked, I won't beat around the bush. I would like to ask you to do something for me. Pangu nodded and said. He was lazy to beat around the bush with Lin Ming, because he knew that Lin Ming wasn't the kind of person who would be willing to talk nonsense with him. If there's anything, Senior, just say it. Lin Ming nodded. After all, although Lin Ming had returned all the divine artifacts back then, he had not returned the Pangu axe. This was because Lin Ming could feel that the Pangu axe would definitely bring him help. To be a weapon that could still bring the current Lin Ming help, its tier was needless to say. As such, now that Pangu needed him, he would definitely not decline. Of course, this was under the premise that Pangu's request did not touch Lin Ming's bottom line. How long has it been since you've returned to your original hometown? Pangu looked at Lin Ming and asked seriously. Ever since I came to this world, I haven't returned. What's wrong? Lin Ming frowned and asked. He didn't know why Pangu would ask this question. I just want you to return to Earth and help me with something, Pangu said. What is it? Lin Ming nodded. It was time for him to go back and take a look anyway. Although he was an orphan back there, he still had some feelings for Earth. Retrieve something for me, Pangu said. I'm hiding in this world. If I leave this world, Heaven's order will discover that there's something not quite right with me. I don't have the power to completely resist Heaven's orders just yet. But you are different. Your power outdoes mine, Pangu explained. Besides, I have absolute confidence in you. Since it just so happens you're here, I came over quickly to ask for your help. Pangu played the relationship card. Regardless of whether Lin Ming was willing to listen to this nonsense, he still had to explain. I wonder what you want me to retrieve, Senior? Lin Ming asked. In the past, Earth was known as the fallen star of the gods because, at that time, only Earth had dragon veins. Dragon veins are fundamentally different from the dragon clan that we speak of, Pangu explained. The dragon veins represent the amount of fate a world has. Back then, even the ordinary people of Earth could become superpowered people without the need of cultivating. You should know about the superpowered people, right? Pangu looked at Lin Ming and asked. Yes, I do. Lin Ming nodded. Even before Lin Ming came to this world, superpowered people still existed on Earth. In the end, after the fight for the dragon veins, Earth was broken into pieces and became what it is today. The people can't even cultivate anymore. Back then, My strength wasn't as strong as it is now. Pangu sighed. He blamed himself for not being able to protect the earth. But at that time, I had been careful. I had hidden the last dragon vein. Pangu said. Now, what I want you to do is to put the hidden dragon vein back into the earth and let the earth recover its vitality. Pangu began to say his request. Lin Ming waved his hand immediately. I'll pass. Why? Don't you wish for the earth to be good? Pangu asked. That's not what I mean. If the dragon vein appears again, there will most likely be another war. Although the people on earth cannot cultivate now, their lives are very stable as compared to before. Lin Ming said. Also, the current earth simply can't tolerate any fights between cultivators. Even the smallest battle will shatter it. Lin Ming added, let alone a Sage Realm expert. The earth couldn't even withstand a tier 10 expert. That's why I asked you to go. Pangu smiled and said, with you there, can't all the god tier experts be suppressed? Pangu patted Lin Ming's shoulder and said, besides, the recovery of the dragon vein doesn't mean that the spirit energy on earth will be recovered immediately. Earth just needs to be resurrected now. Pangu said, you can believe me. After you put the dragon vein back, you just need to solve the problems right before you. You don't have to worry about it anymore in the future. Pangu patted his chest and gave Lin Ming a guarantee. There are many people who have their eyes fixed on the earth. Lin Ming looked at Pangu and said, do you have a hidden motive? Lin Ming asked Pangu seriously. After all, the earth was the only hometown in Lin Ming's heart. Lin Ming wouldn't allow anyone to do anything harmful to the earth. What are you saying? Upon hearing Lin Ming's words, Pangu was quite displeased. Lin Ming could question his thoughts, but he wouldn't allow Lin Ming to question his feelings for Earth. If he didn't have to hide in this world, he would have done it himself. Do you think that all the people on Earth are ordinary people? Pangu looked at Lin Ming and asked, if they are pure Earthlings, that is indeed the case. Lin Ming said, on Earth, there was no spirit energy at all. It was impossible to cultivate. One can't make bricks without straw, no matter how talented one was in cultivation. Without spirit energy, the rest was just nonsense. I don't refute what you've just said. But you've also just said that only the pure Earthlings are bound by this restriction. 1/5 of the life on Earth does not originate from Earth itself. They integrate it into the Earth through various means, intending to annex the Earth in the end. Pangu sighed and said, if we don't put the dragon vein back into the Earth, I'm afraid that the pure Earthlings will be annexed. Pangu said, 1/5 of the life on Earth does not originate from Earth itself. Hearing this, Lin Ming frowned. That's right. Currently, the Earthlings simply don't have any ability to protect themselves. Although they have developed some offensive weapons, you and I both know that cultivators above tier 3 are not afraid of those things. As for the Earthling's strongest weapon, cultivators of above tier 8 should already be able to take it head on. Touching the back of his head, Pangu said, to put the dragon vein back and enable the Earthlings to cultivate again is giving them the ability to protect themselves. Pangu continued, besides, we can't say for sure that there are no cultivators among the Earthlings. We can only say that they are very rare. For example, if an Earthling had a fortuitous encounter and could encounter the inheritance or spiritual remains of cultivators in the past, then the Earthling might become a cultivator too. However, the upper limit of their strength will be too low, and they wouldn't be able to do anything to advance their cultivation. Therefore, I still need you to go there in person. Some problems can only be completely solved after you arrive in person. Pangu ended. Okay, I got it. Lin Ming nodded and said, where did you hide the dragon vein? Lin Ming asked Pangu. On Mount Tai, Pangu answered. Mount Tai? It's on Earth yet no one found it? Hearing this, Lin Ming frowned and asked, the most dangerous place is the safest place. Pangu smiled and said, either way, after so many years, no one has found it. Pangu said proudly, back then, I was ambushed and forced to hide in Mount Tai. By accident, I found a mysterious space there that was isolated from all contact with the outside world. No one in the outside world could sense the place. Pangu recalled that he was not the strongest person among the contenders for the dragon veins. Therefore, I hid the dragon vein there. I didn't expect it to be my best decision. Pangu said, go to Mount Tai and unseal the dragon vein. Put it back into Earth and let the Earthlings cultivate again. At least then, they will have the ability to protect themselves. Pangu told Lin Ming, I got it. Lin Ming nodded. Then I'll go now. Lin Ming was an impatient person. He preferred to finish anything on his hands right away. Take care. The 1/5 of alien life on Earth is very dangerous. Pangu reminded Lin Ming before Lin Ming left. Also, the most important point to remember is that the current Earth is unable to withstand any battle. Even if there is a battle, you must protect the Earth well. I know, Lin Ming nodded. With that, his and Ernest Lin's figure disappeared from the spot. Lin Ming did not tear through space to directly arrive on Earth, since he did not want to cause panic on the Earth. He planned to appear somewhere near the Earth, then slowly sneak in. I'm finally back. Feeling the temperature and the air on Earth, Lin Ming's heart could not help but throb, and his fingers could not help but tremble. Lin Ming directly returned to his hometown, City B. This place really has no spirit energy at all. Ernest Lin felt the environment on Earth and said, "Get lost." Suddenly, a cold, scolding voice appeared. Lin Ming looked at his position. He was on the sidewalk, and now was also the time for the pedestrians to cross the road. Not only was the man before him disobeying the laws, but he was also berating Lin Ming loudly. Lin Ming turned his head and looked at the man. He felt something different. Not human, Lin Ming said coldly. At that moment, Lin Ming suddenly remembered what Pangu had told him before he came. Pangu had said that 1/5 of the life on Earth was not Earthlings. Lin Ming had just arrived and he had already run into such an existence. Who are you? Hearing Lin Ming's words, the guy instantly panicked. Due to the power he had, the guy had always been able to do whatever he wanted on Earth, and he was used to it. That was why he had been so arrogant with Lin Ming and even asked him to scram just now. However, just one sentence from Lin Ming was enough to make him break out in a cold sweat. A Taoist priest? The guy frowned. For a moment, he couldn't tell Lin Ming's background. However, in Xia, only Taoist priests had such power. Any other priests of other religions in Xia were all charlatans. It seems that Pangu is still very concerned about Earth. Lin Ming didn't answer this guy's question. Instead, he grabbed him and disappeared from the spot. You. When the guy felt the teleportation, he knew that he had encountered a tough opponent. Scratch that, he wasn't Lin Ming's opponent at all. What world are you from? Lin Ming asked coldly. Why aren't you revealing your true form? As Lin Ming spoke, the guy in front of him revealed his true form. He was actually a dwarf from another world. This instantly piqued Lin Ming's interest. Lin Ming would never have imagined that those from the dwarf clan would appear on Earth. One had to know that dwarves only existed in the other worlds. Who exactly are you? Looking at Lin Ming, the dwarf immediately panicked. He didn't have any ability to resist the pressure that Lin Ming was giving him. Although the dwarves were known to be proficient in weapon forging, their strength wasn't weak at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to swing their hammers in forging weapons every day. All in all, on Earth, if compared in terms of strength, ordinary people were far inferior to the dwarves. Besides, the Taoist priests on Earth shouldn't give him such great pressure. How many existences from another world are here on Earth now? Lin Ming didn't answer the dwarf's question. After all, the dwarf wasn't worthy of knowing his identity. I won't tell you, the dwarf spoke with a firm tone. I didn't realize you had such a backbone. Lin Ming sneered. Do you think I can't know if you don't tell me? Since you're so stubborn, I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you. Lin Ming snorted coldly and directly extracted the answer he wanted to know from the dwarf's mind. With a wave of his hand, the dwarf disappeared without a trace. No wonder he won't say anything. He simply knows too little. From the dwarf's mind, Lin Ming only learned that the dwarf came from the world of Raqqa. The purpose of him coming to this world was to maintain a balance with the aliens of other worlds. As for other things, Lin Ming couldn't find anything useful from the dwarf's mind. It seems that Earth is indeed in danger. Lin Ming sighed. There was indeed a reason why Pangu had asked him to come back. If the situation was allowed to continue developing, human beings might really be assimilated by the lives of other worlds. Lin Ming walked on the streets and saw some living beings of other worlds. However, he did not make a move. After all, Lin Ming knew that these were all small fries. Capturing them would be useless since it would be difficult to obtain useful information from any of them. Therefore, if Lin Ming were to choose a target to abduct, he would have to target the higher-ups of these aliens on Earth. Lin Ming! Suddenly, a voice laced with disbelief sounded. You are Lin Ming turned around and looked at the friendly woman before him as he asked, "Have you forgotten me? We were deskmates." The woman gave Lin Ming a pat and reminded him. However, Lin Ming's body was formed from his soul, so it was extremely hard now. The woman cried out in pain from patting Lin Ming. She felt that it was much more painful than hitting an iron block. "The police have been looking for you for so long. All of us thought that you had gone missing." The woman said, No, I have something to do, so allow me to take my leave." Lin Ming touched the back of his head. He did not talk too much to her and prepared to leave immediately. "Don't." The woman quickly pulled on Lin Ming. Lin Ming quickly stopped. Otherwise, his female classmate might suffer severe injuries from the backlash of pulling him. "We happen to be having a class reunion today. It's been so long. Aren't you going to go take a look?" The woman looked at Lin Ming and asked, No, there's no need. I really have something to do." Lin Ming hurriedly waved his hand. To Lin Ming, there was no need to participate in this kind of class reunion, and he currently had no need for such a matter either. As such, Lin Ming rejected her without hesitation. "What's wrong with you? The few of us were so close at that time. Have you forgotten?" the woman asked. "Wait." Suddenly, Lin Ming frowned. "How old are you now?" Lin Ming suddenly thought of this question and asked, "What? 27. The woman was stunned for a moment before saying. She didn't know why Lin Ming would ask such a question. 27? Lin Ming frowned. Lin Ming closed his eyes and spread out his divine consciousness. To think the passage of time in each world is different. Lin Ming opened his eyes and said, although the time he had cultivated was very short, it had been several decades. However, on Earth, only 10 years had passed. The woman had just reached a woman's prime. "You've just disappeared for a few years and you don't acknowledge us anymore." Just as Lin Ming was still pondering, the woman continued to ask, No, I do have something to do." Lin Ming refused again. He just couldn't be bothered to attend the class reunion. "What's that something you have to do? Tell me," the woman said. For a moment, Lin Ming couldn't think of a good excuse about what he had to do. He couldn't just tell her that he had to save the world, right? He had disappeared for such a long time. If he said that upon returning, wouldn't she think that he had just been discharged from a mental hospital? Let's go. The woman began to drag Lin Ming forward. However, Lin Ming did not budge at all. After all, the current Lin Ming was not someone that an ordinary person could move. "You're not even giving your old deskmate some face." The woman found it extremely curious. She had practiced Chinese kickboxing for many years, yet Lin Ming did not budge at all even when she had used so much force. This made her realize that Lin Ming's disappearance was definitely not simple, which made her even more determined to bring him to the class gathering. "Fine," Lin Ming sighed and said. Lin Ming suddenly had a new thought. Would the living things of the other worlds have mixed in and were some of his classmates? As such, after thinking about it, Lin Ming agreed to the woman's invitation. If even his classmates were replaced by life forms from other worlds, it was likely that not only had the life forms from other worlds come to assimilate Earthlings, but they had probably also started to annex humans. "Get in the car then." Seeing that Lin Ming had agreed, the female classmate hurriedly got in the car and said to him, "Car." Lin Ming was taken aback for a moment. He had forgotten that there was the existence of cars in this world. Lin Ming adjusted the weight of his body to be about the same weight as an ordinary human. Then he got into the car. If he didn't do so, the weight of his body would have turned the car into dust even though Lin Ming was only a soul body. The woman started the car and quickly headed to a hotel. Boom! The woman was still droning on and on when suddenly, the car shook violently. It had been hit. Lin Ming could have made a move, but to avoid unnecessary panic, he just let the matter run its course. After all, Lin Ming knew that this was just an extremely ordinary collision. It would not cause any harm to people. "Are you blind?" Suddenly, a man got out of the other car involved in the accident and shouted angrily. "You!" His female classmate got out of the car and spoke furiously. She was clearly the one who had been rear-ended, yet the person who had done it scolded her first. Lin Ming got out of the car and with a glance, he could tell that the other party was indeed an alien. "You aliens who have come to our Earth are really used to being arrogant and domineering. You just have some strength, and you're already forgetting who you are." Lin Ming sneered. When the alien heard Lin Ming's words, it revealed a terrified expression. To think its origin had been seen through by the seemingly ordinary person before him. However, Lin Ming was too lazy to make a move. Such aliens accounted for 1/5 of the creatures on Earth. Even if Lin Ming made a move now, it wouldn't be of much use. This was just the tip of the iceberg. On the other hand, the alien immediately changed its attitude and compensated Lin Ming's female classmate with haste. Lin Ming noticed that the aliens did well upon coming to Earth. This was thanks to their ample physical strength and the powers they possessed. As such, they were usually showing off their might and acting arrogantly on Earth. After the matter was settled, the female classmate quickly brought Lin Ming to the student gathering. At this moment, the two were already a little late. Disease? Just as Lin Ming entered, someone asked, "Is this Lin Ming?" Lin Ming had disappeared for such a long time, so he had naturally been forgotten by others and no one could recognize him during his sudden appearance. However, Lin Ming's appearance was no different from before, so his classmates quickly recalled who he was. For some reason, a few of his old classmates were looking at Lin Ming in a somewhat panicked state. "Why is Dick Lin here?" Suddenly, a man spoke loudly. Lin Ming followed the voice and looked over, but only smiled. He was looking at the man in the middle of the room. With a glance, one could tell the man was a successful person. "You've disappeared for 10 years. Where did you go to make a fortune?" One of the men smiled at Lin Ming and asked, "Make a fortune? We didn't call him Dick Lin for nothing." A disdainful voice appeared and continued, "Look at our big boss Kai. He's sitting on tens of billions of assets. Allow me to toast Big Boss Kai." The significance of student gatherings like this was very obvious. Lin Ming naturally saw through it more clearly. He had come only because he wanted to see if any of his classmates from before had been replaced by life forms from another world. This was Lin Ming's goal. As for their acts of comparison and so on, Lin Ming didn't think much of it at all. After all, if Lin Ming wanted to, everything could be fulfilled with just a thought. Even the entire world could be under Lin Ming's control. For an ordinary person with an ordinary background to have been able to have such assets, it's indeed admirable. Lin Ming smiled and said, "It also fills one with disbelief." Lin Ming added, "What do you mean?" Before Big Boss Kai, who was in the middle, had spoken, the lackeys by his side began to criticize Lin Ming. "No, nothing," Lin Ming didn't explain. With a thought, everything here was frozen except for Big Boss Kai, who looked at Lin Ming in panic. Tisk, a tier 10 expert." Lin Ming looked at Big Boss Kai and said, "It's one thing for the lot of you to enter Earth, but to think you took over the bodies of humans here. I think you guys are really tired of living." Lin Ming frowned and snorted, Spare me." Lin Ming had frozen time with just a thought, and this alone could suppress him. If Lin Ming wanted to wipe him out here, he could probably do so with just a thought too. The innocent humans here have had their bodies possessed by the lot of you. But did you spare them? Lin Ming sneered. They had taken over the bodies of other humans, yet they were now begging him for mercy. Lin Ming couldn't accept it. If it wasn't for the tier 10 strength this guy had, Lin Ming would have wiped him out her and now. Although tier 10 was nothing in Lin Ming's eyes, the fellow should know a lot of information. "How many aliens from your world have entered Earth?" Lin Ming asked. "If I cooperate with you and answer the truth, will you let me off?" To think the fellow was haggling with Lin Ming here. "I can extract your soul and make you suffer day and night, or I can make it painless. Your choice." Lin Ming spoke very frankly. It was simply impossible for him to continue living. However, he could choose whether to die painfully or painlessly. After this man heard Lin Ming's words, he didn't hesitate at all and immediately said, "All right, I'll cooperate with you." After all, to be able to die painlessly in the hands of a mighty figure like Lin Ming was already an extremely good end. The number of aliens from our world who have entered Earth is the lowest. For our world, because our physical bodies aren't very strong, we chose to possess the bodies of humans. Some aliens of the other worlds will also choose to use this method to stay on Earth. This guy said, "Is there any information worth me knowing?" Lin Ming asked with a lack of interest. "I heard from the higher-ups that the heavenly court is being restored immediately, and the Western world is already being rebuilt." The guy opened his mouth and actually said something that did interest him. "How do you know? Besides, Earth doesn't have any spirit energy at all. Even if they came to Earth, How are they going to rebuild the heavenly court and the Western world? Lin Ming asked. However, he didn't expect to hear the answer from this guy. After all, the guy was only at tier 10, and his knowledge of the matter should be limited. It said that they found the location of the dragon vein. Unexpectedly, this guy continued to speak. They found the location of the dragon vein? Lin Ming frowned. To think this guy knew everything. Lin Ming could not help but suspect his identity. How could a tier 10 fellow know so much information? Do you know the location? Lin Ming asked tentatively again. If this guy knew even this, it meant that his identity was not simple. It also meant that the hiding place Pangu thought to be so very discreet had long been exposed. At the foot of Mount Tai, the guy answered smoothly. You are good. Lin Ming nodded. If this guy knew everything, then the place where the dragon vein was an unsafe environment to begin with. In fact, it might even have been secretly tampered with. The dragon vein is still intact. In fact, a large portion of it has recovered over such a long period. The guy added, you know quite a lot. Your status in your clan should be quite special, right? Lin Ming looked at the guy and said, not really. It's just because of my father that I know some things. This guy shook his head and said, the information you have told me is very useful. I can spare your life. As soon as Lin Ming finished saying this, all the pressure on the guy instantly disappeared. And at this moment, the space where time had been frozen completely disappeared as well. As for Lin Ming's figure, it also disappeared completely. Big Boss Kai, what's wrong? Why aren't you speaking? One of the classmates asked with a smile. Did something happen to you, Big Boss Kai? We'll solve it for you. A sycophant stepped forward, patted his chest, and said, there's no need. I'll settle it myself. The fellow shook his head and said, he possessed the strength of tier 10, yet only felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Lin Ming had grasped the power of rules. No matter what, he was probably already at the intermediate god tier or beyond. These ordinary people didn't even have the qualifications to come into contact with such an existence. In fact, even knowing about such an existence was like a dream. Their memories of Lin Ming's arrival were also wiped clean. However, from the fellow's point of view, although Lin Ming's strength was formidable, he was still far inferior when compared to the Heavenly Emperor. After all, the Heavenly Emperor was an overlord in all the worlds. Even if the overlords in the various worlds were just clones, not to mention the existence of Buddha and Lord Laotse. Those were the most powerful existences in all the universes. Although it made him feel like he was in a dream since the place had been restored to its original state, he knew that everything that had happened just now was real. Lin Ming had only spared his life because his existence still had value. If he hadn't told Lin Ming so many useful things just now, he would have long vanished into thin air. At this moment, he was trembling all over. As long as you're alive, there's always a chance. Big Boss Kai suddenly said. Yes, Big Boss Qi is right. A sycophant said loudly. Big Boss Kai glanced at the person. At this moment, he was extremely disgusted with him. At this moment, Lin Ming began to analyze. The dragon vein has been exposed. But until now, no one has been fighting for it. This means that there are several parties with equal strength who have their eyes on the dragon vein at the same time. No one wants a third party to benefit from their fight. So no one has made a move yet. Also, Pangu himself should have some face. Pangu was also a necessary factor that couldn't be omitted from the analysis. The Heavenly Emperor and Buddha, Lin Ming frowned. It seemed that they existed everywhere he went. Now, they were probably the ones fighting for the dragon vein. Damn it, Lin Ming snorted. He had never liked them. They had fought for and grasped most of the good resources in all the worlds. Only the remaining resources were left to be absorbed by the various worlds. All the worlds worshipped them as gods. And only Lin Ming knew that if they didn't exist, everyone would be gods themselves. If the dragon vein appears again and is put back into Earth, it would be best for your clone to enter this world, because the Earth's dragon vein has accumulated countless amounts of fate. Lin Ming turned his head to look at Ernest Lin and said, all right. Ernest Lin nodded. Whether they know or not, I will put the dragon vein back first. If they had such intentions since long ago, they will definitely appear at such a moment. Lin Ming said coldly. Aren't you afraid that they will snatch it after you put it back? Ernest Lin asked curiously. Would they dare? Lin Ming said coldly with disdain. These people knew nothing except to plunder the resources of other worlds. Mount Tai. Lin Ming said and immediately arrived at the foot of Mount Tai. There's the aura of cultivators. Lin Ming frowned and directly arrived at the top of Mount Tai. A kind-looking old lady was looking at Lin Ming. Lin Ming hurriedly bowed. For some reason, Lin Ming couldn't help but feel affectionate as he looked at the old lady. However, when Lin Ming raised his head again, the old lady had already disappeared. On the ground, there were a few words. Lin Ming walked forward. You're finally here. These words were filled with anticipation. Lin Ming didn't think too much about it and directly entered the depths of Mount Tai. The world within Mount Tai is indeed different. Lin Ming clicked his tongue in wonder. He didn't expect that an existence like a small world would exist within Mount Tai. Who is it? Suddenly, a voice appeared. I'm the person who has come to take the dragon vein and put it back into Earth again. Lin Ming went straight to the point. HMPH, as if I would believe you. The old voice appeared, full of disdain. I don't know how you found this place. But if you want to take me for your own use, I advise you to stop dreaming. The voice continued. Are you Senior Pangu's clone or the consciousness of the dragon vein? Lin Ming did not use his divine consciousness as a sign of respect to Earth's dragon vein. What's who I am got to do with you? Unexpectedly, the master of the voice did not give him any face at all. Regardless of all that, you should know this thing. Lin Ming did not continue to talk nonsense. And the Pangu axe appeared in his hand. Do you know this thing? Lin Ming said. The Pangu axe, the voice said in surprise. You are being watched by many. Did you think you are safe now? Lin Ming sneered and said. Even an ordinary tier 10 cultivator outside knows where you are. Do you think I'm trying to harm you? After saying that, Lin Ming unleashed some of his power. If he had tried to take the dragon vein away by force, it would have been a piece of cake. I was rude just now. The master of the voice was naturally the dragon vein. The powerful auras of Pangu Axe and Lin Ming told him that Lin Ming would not lie to him. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Lin Ming. It was the figure of a dragon that the Hua people believed in on Earth. I will put you back into the Earth right now. Lin Ming looked at the dragon vein and said, if you put me back into the Earth right now, I'm afraid that the Earth will be torn apart in a very short time. Or even explode. The dragon vein shook his head and said, as a dragon vein, he naturally yearned to return to the Earth vein. That was his home. However, Earth was the place where he was born. Although the current Earth didn't have any spirit energy or magic elements, Earth was still like his mother. You don't have to care about this. Would they dare? Lin Ming sneered and said, to be honest, before you entered, the Heavenly Emperor and the others had already sent me a message. At this moment, the dragon vein suddenly spoke. Even existences who control many worlds and are tip-top in the void are eyeing me covetously. The dragon vein sighed. He seemed to have already resigned himself to fate. Furthermore, there's more than one such existence. The dragon vein added, why didn't great god Pangu come? If he had come, there might have been a slight possibility. Back then, Pangu had already shown signs of giving birth to a small world. After so many years, Pangu should most definitely not be inferior to the Heavenly Emperor. He has something to do and can't come. But with me here, you don't have to worry, Lin Ming said. All right. I'm lazy to give you any unnecessary explanations. Earth is also my hometown. I won't watch it destroyed. Lin Ming said. Let's go. Lin Ming didn't want to continue talking nonsense with the dragon vein. If not for his feelings for Earth, he would have left this place by now. The dragon vein wanted to say more, but he found that he couldn't say anything at all. He wanted to struggle, but he couldn't resist at all. At this moment, he finally looked squarely at Lin Ming's power. The person who could be entrusted by Pangu shouldn't be some half-assed person. The Earth's vein is empty and so is the Earth's spirit energy. Although there will be some problems with your appearance, only when you return to the Earth's vein will the Earth regain its vitality. With this, Lin Ming directly put the dragon vein back into the Earth's vein. This is. Following Lin Ming's action of putting the dragon vein back, several factions immediately exploded. There were also some creatures from other worlds that were extremely shocked at this moment. They had come to Earth for the dragon vein. However, the dragon vein had never appeared. Some aliens had even already gotten used to life on Earth. However, the dragon vein had suddenly appeared without any warning now. After all, the dragon vein had once again entered the Earth vein. Don't forget your mission. Suddenly, These words appeared in the ears of the aliens on Earth. Let's see who dares. Lin Ming's voice was clearly heard by everyone. My divine consciousness has covered the entire Earth. As long as there are any unusual movements, I will directly make a move. Lin Ming's voice was ice cold. Furthermore, his voice was filled with pressure. This stopped a large portion of the people. However, only Lin Ming's voice had appeared. So some aliens naturally didn't take it to heart. Some even thought that it was the dragon vein that was intentionally trying to scare them. Pooh! An alien had just gathered its power when it suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed onto the ground. Such a scene appeared in many places across the world. Stop! Lin Ming coldly spoke. Following his words, all the humans and Earth's original life forms were frozen. As for the life forms from other worlds, they were not affected. However, they did not dare to make any movements. This was because since Lin Ming had the ability to freeze a world, it meant that he had the ability to take their lives from 1,000 miles away. God-tier experts? When did such an existence appear on Earth? An alien frowned and spoke coldly. The cultivators that appeared on Earth should only be a tier 2 or 3. Could he be a god-tier expert that had stayed behind? As Lin Ming displayed his power, discussions broke out. It's possible. There had been extremely powerful existences on Earth in its earlier days. However, these existences had been hiding for so long. Why would they suddenly appear at this moment? Everyone, stop! The strongest existences of every world that were on Earth had ordered their own world's life forms to not act rashly at this moment. Brother Lin Ming, why are you here? Is it also for the dragon vein? Suddenly, an extremely familiar voice appeared. Lin Ming did not need to turn his head to know who this person was. Senior Buddha. Lin Ming put up quite a good act. He turned his head and pressed his palms together as he greeted. You have a use for the dragon vein as well? Buddha looked at Lin Ming and asked. He had seen Lin Ming's power before, so he didn't want to become enemies with Lin Ming at all. However, the dragon vein was very useful to him. He didn't want to give up on the dragon vein at all. If Lin Ming was willing to share it equally with him, he would then still be willing to be on Lin Ming's side. No, I just put it back into the earth vein and let Earth recover. Lin Ming shook his head and said, we are all existences at this tier. If that's how you're going to put it, it's very uncool of you. Buddha spread out his palms and said, which one of them hadn't crushed a few planets casually for their growth? He found Lin Ming's words utterly unbelievable. It might have been fake if others had said this. But if it's Lin Ming, it should be true. Suddenly, another voice appeared. Senior Heavenly Emperor, Lin Ming turned around. We don't value relationships, but Lin Ming does. The Heavenly Emperor patted Lin Ming's shoulder and said, of course, this action made Lin Ming extremely disgusted. What's going on? The Heavenly Emperor and the Buddha appeared at the same time. The auras of the Heavenly Emperor and the Buddha spread, and it made some experts from other worlds to be even more cautious of acting rashly. To think the two seniors have arrived at the same time with your original bodies. It does enable one to tell that the dragon vein isn't simple. Lin Ming smiled and said, this is fate. It's a given, it's not simple. Furthermore, this isn't any ordinary fate. It's the fate of heaven and earth. The Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, after saying this, the Heavenly Emperor looked at the Buddha with a faint smile. Although they were in the same faction, at their tier, they didn't have any real friends. Just like Ernest Lin's brother, they were true brothers and sisters. Yet he had directly possessed a human body to assassinate his sister's reincarnation. If you obtain it, I'm afraid you'll take a step further, right? The Heavenly Emperor looked at Buddha and asked, yes, the fate of heaven and earth is indeed very useful to me. Buddha nodded and said, since the three of us have arrived at the same time, why don't the three of us split it equally? Buddha said with a pained expression. Obtaining 1/3 and obtaining all of it had completely different effects on his growth. Even though the Heavenly Emperor's strength was on par with him, he was, after all, the leader of their faction. As such, Buddha was quite reluctant to offend him. On the other hand, he had witnessed Lin Ming's strength before, and it wasn't worth the risk to fight Lin Ming either. Therefore, his first thought was to split the dragon vein between themselves equally. Fortunately, Lord Laotzi didn't come, otherwise. Buddha thought to himself. After all, Lord Laotzi was the most powerful existence in their faction. If Lord Laotzi had appeared, then a share would definitely have had to be given to him as well. Even the Heavenly Emperor couldn't say anything against the distribution. However, although Lord Laotzi was powerful, there were many things that he wouldn't participate in. Moreover, the number of things he liked was much less than those they liked. The three of you are quite early, I see. Suddenly, a voice sounded in everyone's ears. The smile on Buddha's face, who had just been rejoicing, immediately froze upon hearing this voice. Lord Laotzi, you're interested in the dragon vein too? Buddha squeezed out a stiff smile and looked at Lord Laotzi as he spoke. Of course. After all, this is the fate of heaven and earth. Lord Laotzi nodded and said. Lord Laotzi was quite frank. How about the four of us split the dragon vein equally? Buddha was feeling the urge to cry as he asked. Impossible. Lin Ming stood in the middle and said resolutely. Lin Ming had come to Earth this time because he was entrusted by Pengu to put the dragon vein back into Earth. Even if Lin Ming hadn't have come from Earth and this was not his hometown, his promise would not change. Besides, this was Lin Ming's first hometown. Lin Ming, the dragon vein means a lot. It can't be that you want to take it all for yourself, right? Buddha turned his head to look at Lin Ming and questioned him. Bullshit. I told you, the dragon vein is to restore Earth. You don't have to say anything more. Lin Ming looked at Buddha coldly and said, Heavenly Emperor Lord Laotzi, Buddha. At this moment, another voice suddenly appeared. Xing Tian and Zhu Jiayan had arrived at the same time. The Void's big shots had all appeared at the same time. Of course, Xing Tian and Zhu Jiayan were slightly weaker when compared to the Heavenly Emperor and the others. We're only missing Yua. Why isn't she here? Lin Ming suddenly asked. Yua herself is the embodiment of fate. The dragon vein wouldn't be of much use to her. Lord Laotzi said. A string of fate of heaven and earth can create an existence on the same tier as Yua. As expected, the attraction of the dragon vein to you lot is really strong. Lin Ming snorted and said. Of course, Lin Ming knew of the allure of the fate of heaven and earth. However, he didn't expect that the dragon vein could directly create an existence on the same tier as Yua. So, Lin Ming, your idea won't work at all. Buddha looked at Lin Ming and said. Lin Ming, we've been observing the dragon vein for tens of thousands of years. The Heavenly Emperor also spoke up at this time. The meaning behind his words was very clear. When they had been observing the dragon vein, Lin Ming hadn't even been born yet. You've been eyeing it for tens of thousands of years, right? Lin Ming sneered and did not give any face at all. No matter what, we won't just allow something that is of great use to us at our tier to just be placed right before our eyes and allow you to have full control over it, the Heavenly Emperor said. He believed in Lin Ming's feelings towards the earth, but he could not allow Lin Ming to just put the dragon vein back into the earth, while they would not get any benefits at all. That's right. At this moment, Zhu Jiayan also spoke up. Are you asking for a beating? Lin Ming turned his head and looked at Zhu Jiayan as he said coldly. Lin Ming had not said such words to the Heavenly Emperor and the Buddha, because he still had a certain amount of patience to beat around the bush with them. However, if there were still other people who attempted to interrupt him at such a moment, Lin Ming would not let him be. Lin Ming's words made Zhu Jiayan's expression freeze. By saying such words, Lin Ming was making it so he was unable to back down with good grace. However, he did not dare to challenge Lin Ming directly, because it was very likely he might not be able to beat Lin Ming. You don't be too arrogant. Zhu Jiayan's expression was shifting as he said coldly. Do you want to fight? Lin Ming did not answer but directly issued a challenge. All right, Lin Ming, we are talking about the dragon vein. Lord Laotzi's voice sounded in Lin Ming's ears. The dragon vein must be put back into earth. Here I've said it. Lin Ming spoke again. This time, he did not bother to waste his breath and spoke frankly. All right, I agree. Nobody expected Lord Laotzi to say these words. This sentence made everyone freeze on the spot. Even Lin Ming was stunned. All of them thought that Lord Laotzi had come here to snatch the dragon vein. After all, this dragon vein was also very useful to Lord Laotzi. No one had expected Lord Laotzi to come here just to support Lin Ming. Thank you for your support, Lord Laotzi. Lin Ming cupped his fists and said. The remaining Heavenly Emperor and the others were left at a loss of what to do. At this moment, they were also at a loss for words. I'm only here to express my opinion. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. With that, Lord Laotzi actually left. This made the Heavenly Emperor and the others who remained looked at each other in dismay. Did Lord Laotzi come here just to announce checkmate? The dragon vein is too precious. Among all the worlds, only Earth has given birth to them. At this moment, the Heavenly Emperor spoke again. So? Lin Ming turned around and looked at the Heavenly Emperor. You know what I mean. The Heavenly Emperor snorted and said. He could see that the benefits for him to resolve this matter through discussions with Lin Ming were too low. Therefore, the Heavenly Emperor was now gradually losing his patience. My words stay the same. It's impossible. Moreover, I will not take this dragon vein for myself either. Not even a little. Lin Ming waved his hand again and said. At this moment, Zhu Jian could not hold it in any longer and shouted. Lin Ming, we are only giving you face. Don't take it too far. Either way, if he were to make a move now, Buddha and the Heavenly Emperor would have to help him. Otherwise, if he refused to be cannon fodder for them in the future, many of their matters would be harder to be carried out. Tisk tisk, the Emperor is not in a hurry, yet the eunuch is anxious, Lin Ming sneered. He could not be bothered with Zhu Jian anymore. Bullshit, how dare you say such words about me? Zhu Jian flew into a rage the second he heard these words. He hated it the most when others said that he had only reached his current tier, because he had sucked up to the Heavenly Emperor and the others. Also, he had heard of eunuchs before. This was also one of the points that would offend him the most. However, Lin Ming had said it, and in front of so many at that. I'm talking about you. Since you have the body of a dragon, why don't I embed you into the earth vein as well? Lin Ming did not give him any face at all. He threw the words on Zhu Jian's face, which made his expression change. Lin Ming, we are talking about the dragon vein. Don't change the topic. Buddha said at this moment. I've said it. It's impossible. I don't want to say any more nonsense. Lin Ming simply wouldn't give any face to anyone. Good, very good, Buddha sneered and nodded. It was apparent that they couldn't resolve the matter today through soft methods. I wonder what the Lord Laotzi was thinking. At this moment, the Heavenly Emperor could not help but think of this question. Although he was the leader of the faction, due to various reasons, he was already used to following Lord Laotzi's path. Now, Lord Laotzi had explicitly expressed his support for Lin Ming, then had just completely disappeared. Because of this, for a moment, the Heavenly Emperor was unable to make a decision. After all, Lord Laotzi was also an old fox. There were many things that he would think about more deeply. You want to fight? Lin Ming turned his head and looked at Buddha. Lin Ming had wanted to give Buddha some face, but now it seemed that face was just worthless. Many people were like this, simply not giving others a way out. Everyone, give me some face. Suddenly, a voice appeared. Everyone turned their heads. To think it was Pangu who had appeared. Wasn't Pangu trapped in the world? Lin Ming frowned. Lin Ming had returned to Earth and put the dragon vein back into the Earth vein all because Pangu had entrusted him with the job. After all, Pangu himself had said that he could not return to Earth because he was in hiding. But now, it was Pangu's original body that was here. Lord Laotzi just left, and Pangu appeared. The Heavenly Emperor frowned. In his heart, Pangu was no inferior to Lord Laotzi. After all, Pangu had directly given birth to a small world, and everyone had heard of the famous Pangu axe that was extremely powerful. With the appearance of Pangu, everyone hesitated. This dragon vein is useless to me. I'll be leaving first. At this moment, Xingtian's voice appeared. The Heavenly Emperor watched as Xingtian left and clenched his jaw. Xingtian's departure was forcing them to express their stance. What about my old friend the Heavenly Emperor? Pangu looked at the Heavenly Emperor and asked. It's impossible for me to leave. At this moment, the Buddha interrupted their conversation. Lin Ming thought for a moment and took a step back. It was not because Lin Ming was afraid, but because he needed a backward environment. This is something that is several levels higher than faith. Suddenly, a voice appeared. The old man is here too, I see, Lin Ming said coldly. The dragon vein was indeed a good thing. Everyone wanted a portion of it. There were too few pure people like Lin Ming. When Lin Ming said that he was doing this only for Earth, and that he would not take the dragon vein for his own use, they simply wouldn't believe it. Father. When Ernest Lin saw the arrival of her father, she quickly stepped forward. Everyone, just give up on all your thoughts about the dragon vein. Lin Ming spoke again with a more serious tone. Pangu also stood there and said, just leave something like the dragon vein that is the basis of the earth to me. Pangu, you don't have to pretend anymore. Others may not know about you, But do you think I don't? Suddenly, a voice appeared. Everyone turned around and found that Lord Laotzi, who had just left, had suddenly returned. Why do you say that? Lin Ming asked. The dragon vein can allow him to open up a small world that's perfectly justifiable. It's a given he won't give up on the dragon vein. If he absorbs the dragon vein, not only can his small world expand crazily, but his power will also grow crazily. Heaven's order will also stop targeting him. Lord Laotzi said directly. Lord Laotzi, I advise you not to slander me. After hearing Lord Laotzi's words, Pangu said coldly, I never say anything without evidence. Didn't you make a move during the fight for the dragon vein back then? Lord Laotzi asked with a playful smile. Don't say that. Pangu said coldly. In the past, I protected the dragon vein and hid it. Pangu glanced at Lin Ming and said, That's right. Pangu did protect the dragon vein. Otherwise, the dragon vein would have been long divided. Lin Ming nodded and said at this moment, Pangu has been secretly collecting the dragon vein fragments that were lost before. That's why the dragon vein has recovered so much. The dragon vein back then was already broken. It was useless to him then. As for the dragon vein now, after so many years of restoration, it has become very useful to him. Lord Laotzi's words caused Pangu's expression to change several times. Senior Pangu, is that so? Lin Ming looked at Pangu and asked, Although I have selfish motives, I will never joke about Earth. Pangu's expression shifted, and he finally said, This really makes me sad. Lin Ming sneered and said, Dragon vein. Lin Ming suddenly said. With this, a wave of power appeared, and the dragon vein instantly entered Lin Ming's small world. My words remain. I will not take the dragon vein for myself, but it is now temporarily under my protection. After saying that, Lin Ming directly disappeared. No one would just watch Lin Ming take the dragon vein away. Goodbye. After saying that, Lin Ming used the space rules and disappeared on the spot. The people present were obviously unwilling to allow him to escape with the dragon vein. As such, they also used their powers to follow Lin Ming. Lin Ming did this because he didn't want to drag Earth down. If they fought on Earth, the Earth would probably explode. On the other hand, he could also filter out the true intentions the Heavenly Emperor and the others have towards the dragon vein by doing this. Lin Ming now stood in the void without any scruples. Suppress. Zhu Jiayan, who was the first to arrive, was immediately suppressed by a force. At this moment, Zhu Jiayan's expression changed drastically. He did not expect Lin Ming to be able to suppress him so easily. In his heart, he was cursing the others. Those people were too smart. If they wanted to, they would have arrived earlier than him. However, there were no signs of them appearing at all. Only he was the first to arrive. And as soon as he arrived, he was suppressed by Lin Ming's power. Weren't you itching to fight and provoke me just now? I'll satisfy you now. Lin Ming snorted. Now. He didn't have any qualms as he went forward to slap Zhu Jiayan a few times. How dare you? Zhu Jiayan panicked, wanting to break free from Lin Ming's suppression. However, Lin Ming's suppression gave him a feeling that he could not resist. Lin Ming only smiled. How could he possibly break free so easily from a power that was comparable to the laws? If one could break free so easily from the power of chaos, wouldn't the suffering and accumulation Lin Ming had gone through back then be a joke? You were so arrogant just now, so I will be returning your arrogance to you now. Lin Ming walked forward and gave him a slap. Zhu Jiayan wanted to dodge the slap, but the pain on his face made him realize that he had been hit hard. Lin Ming! Zhu Jiayan screamed at the top of his lungs. After all, although Zhu Jiayan was not as strong as the Heavenly Emperor, his strength was still at the top. When had he ever suffered such grievance? To think he had been slapped in the face. There was another reason why Zhu Jiayan was so angry. Originally, he wanted to be the first to arrive so that he could please the Buddha and the Heavenly Emperor. But now, it seemed that the Buddha and the Heavenly Emperor did not care about him other than using him as a tool. It was as if they tacitly agreed that they would let him be the first to arrive. I'm here, Lin Ming smiled and said. He was just here. So what was Zhu Jiayan shouting his name so loudly for? Do you still want the dragon vein now? Lin Ming looked at Zhu Jiayan and asked. No, I don't want it anymore. Zhu Jiayan shouted. I'm in a good mood today. I can let you go, Lin Ming said. After Lin Ming said that, Zhu Jiayan felt the pressure on his body instantly relax. Why aren't you leaving yet? Lin Ming frowned and looked at Zhu Jian, who was still standing there. Roar! Zhu Jian's dragon roar appeared, and he disappeared on the spot. The three of you, stop hiding and come out. Lin Ming snorted and said, Lin Ming, if you are willing to give me a part of the dragon vein, I will give my daughter to you. The old man, who was the father god, suddenly said, This is the first time I've seen someone selling his daughter like this. Lin Ming sneered, If your daughter is willing to marry me, it would be meaningless for you to stop her. Lin Ming said, My respect for you is only because you're Ernest Lin's father. If it wasn't for this reason, you should remember what state you had been in back then. Lin Ming spoke again. This time, he didn't give the old man any face at all. The old man had not given him any face by coming to snatch the dragon vein in the first place. The old man wanted to say something but stopped. He did not know what to say. However, Lin Ming only snorted coldly. Why? Do you want to get beaten up again? Lin Ming looked at the old man and asked. This sentence made the old man take a few steps back. He came this time because of Ernest Lin. He thought that as his son-in-law, Lin Ming would give him face no matter what. But now it seemed that Lin Ming wouldn't give face to anyone. He even wanted to beat him up now. The old man still remembered the last beating. He knew that he was no match for Lin Ming. And if they were to fight, it would be a one-sided battle. What about the two of you? Lin Ming looked at the Buddha and the Heavenly Emperor and asked, I can't let you take the dragon vein all by yourself. The Heavenly Emperor's expression was ugly as he said to Lin Ming, Can you say something else? You sure talk a lot of nonsense. Lin Ming said with some ridicule, What about you? Lin Ming looked at the Buddha and asked, I have the same opinion with the Heavenly Emperor. The Buddha also nodded and said, That's great then. Lin Ming laughed. It's been a long time since I had a good fight. It's perfect we're in the void now. After saying that, Lin Ming's body exploded with power. This burst of power caused the old man to take a few steps back. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Emperor and the Buddha had cold expressions on their faces. Forget it, Lin Ming, I'll withdraw. At this moment, the old man also took advantage of the situation and said. After the old man finished speaking, Lin Ming didn't even bother to look at him. To begin with, Lin Ming had already treated him like air from the beginning. Because of Ernest Lin, Lin Ming wouldn't make a move against him. But even if he did, with the old man's strength, he couldn't even withstand a beating. Great God Pangu, it's time for you to show yourself too, Lin Ming said before making his move. As Lin Ming spoke, Pangu's figure appeared. Do you have anything else to say? Lin Ming turned around and looked at Pangu again. What Lord Laotzi said is all bullshit. I have never thought of taking the dragon vein for myself. Pangu frowned and said, Then show me your sincerity. Lin Ming pointed at the Heavenly Emperor and said, I came here for you. Now that they want to fight me because of the dragon vein, aren't you going to help? Lin Ming said to Pangu, That makes sense. But do you believe me now? Pangu nodded and said, It depends on your actions. Lin Ming smiled. He had figured out Pangu's intentions by now, but he wouldn't say it out loud. After all, the moment some matters are said out loud, there would be no rebound value in them anymore. Brother Heavenly Emperor, I'm sorry, Pangu said as he took a step forward. Lin Ming, I'll be using the Pangu axe for a while. I'll give it back to you later. Pangu opened his palm, and the Pangu axe directly entered his hand. With that, Pangu chopped down with his axe. Pangu, you! Looking at Pangu who came attacking, the Heavenly Emperor was stunned. He had thought that they were on the same side. He didn't expect that because of Lin Ming's words. It was now 2 against 2. At this moment, Lord Laotzi was standing on the side, showing no intention of intervening. Let's fight? Lin Ming looked at the Buddha and said. Chaos! Lin Ming said, and a wave of power fell. Light of Buddha. The Buddha frowned and said coldly. He was extremely wary of Lin Ming's power. Hence, he did not dare to be negligent. Chinese letter. A Buddhist talisman appeared in front of Buddha. However, the power of chaos was not so easy to block. More than 10 Buddhist talismans appeared and were finally successful in blocking the power of chaos. Tisk, tisk. Lin Ming clicked his tongue. It was the first time Lin Ming met someone who could block the power of chaos. That old man and Zhu Jian, who was slightly stronger than the old man, had all been directly suppressed by chaos. From this, one could know how powerful the Buddha was. Lin Ming, I don't want to be enemies with you. The Buddha looked at Lin Ming and said seriously, it's just a fight. How does that make us enemies? Lin Ming smiled and said, darkness devour. Lin Ming said, with this, the Buddhist light around the Buddha was crazily absorbed. You. Buddha looked at the light of Buddha that was being crazily absorbed and frowned. All of his attacks relied on the light of Buddha. Now that his light of Buddha was being crazily absorbed, it was akin to having restricted him. Buddha, why don't you use your 1,000-meter golden body? Lin Ming said loudly. You're not to the point I need the 1,000-meter golden body to deal with you. Buddha said coldly. It's good that you are confident. Lin Ming simply sneered and didn't bother to talk nonsense. Time, freeze. Lin Ming said. With this, just as Buddha wanted to make a move, he was frozen on the spot. Why is Lin Ming's power of rule so strong? Buddha frowned. He wanted to break free from Lin Ming's power of rules, but it was too strong. In that instant, Buddha was unable to do anything to the power of rules. Metal. Lin Ming raised his finger lightly, and countless sharp blades shot out, ruthlessly attacking Buddha. Buddha broke out in cold sweat. Although metal was the most basic element among the power of rules, for it to have become the metal power of rules, it would then have the strongest attack power. This was because its foundation made it pure. Boom! There was no space here, but the sound of shattering could be heard. At the most critical moment, Buddha finally broke free from the control of the law of time. Stop, I give up, no more fighting. Buddha shouted. I'll leave now, okay? Buddha broke out in cold sweat. Although he hadn't engaged in the fight against Lin Ming for a long time, the feeling that Lin Ming gave him was too terrifying. Not only was Lin Ming's grasp over the powers of rules extremely comprehensive, but any one of his powers of rules was stronger than the ordinary. In addition, Lin Ming still had many tricks up his sleeve that he hadn't used yet. He had already found it so difficult to deal with him even though Lin Ming was just using his most basic power to fight. As such, Buddha knew that if they continued to fight, the damages he would receive would be much more precious than the dragon vein. I won't send you off then. Lin Ming simply waved his hand and said, Buddha, you the Heavenly Emperor's face was cold. The fight had just started, yet he was already quitting. Wasn't he dragging him into the water and quickly exonerating himself with that? Forget it, I'm leaving too. Heavenly Emperor stopped the attacks in his hand and disappeared on the spot as well. He ran farther than Buddha. Senior Pangu, the dragon vein. Lin Ming looked at Pangu and asked, believe you after saying that? Pangu left, since Senior Pangu has said so. Lord Laotzi, there's nothing I can do. Lin Ming looked at Lord Laotzi, who was not far away, and spread out his hands as he said. Lord Laotzi did not say anything and left directly. Lin Ming looked at the empty void and returned to earth again. Come out, Lin Ming said, and the dragon vein appeared. Go. This time, no one will dare to harm you. After saying this, Lin Ming put the dragon vein back into the earth vein. The earth vein would nourish the dragon vein and the dragon vein would nourish the earth, allowing the earth to grow again. All life forms from other worlds, scram now. Lin Ming's voice was transmitted to all the aliens. These life forms simply wouldn't treat the humans of Earth with sincerity. Those who weren't of the same clan would definitely have malicious intentions. Thus, Lin Ming directly expelled them from Earth. When the aliens saw that even the Heavenly Emperor, Buddha, and the others had all disappeared, they knew that they couldn't afford to offend Lin Ming. Therefore, the experts of each world left with the other aliens that had come from their world. Thank you. The dragon vein looked at Lin Ming and said, he didn't expect that he could return to the earth vein one day. He didn't expect that he could return to the earth vein without any qualms either. No need, Lin Ming waved his hand. Chaos. Lin Ming said, and a force protected the dragon vein within. Lin Ming took a look at Earth and disappeared from where he was. Lin Ming, I have left you a small gift in your small world. Before Lin Ming disappeared, the voice of the dragon vein sounded. After Lin Ming left, he took a look at his small world. Inside was a dragon vein that was exactly the same as Earth's dragon vein. The appearance of the dragon vein caused an earth vein to have appeared in Lin Ming's small world as well. With this, his small world had become more complete. Boom! Lin Ming had just retuned to Gandalf's world when he heard the sound of thunder. What's going on? Lin Ming frowned. Such thunder was the thunder tribulations of the void. How could it appear here? Lin Ming took a step forward and directly arrived at the center of the thunder tribulations. Thunder God? Lin Ming frowned and raised his hand to block the thunder tribulations. Of course. Lin Ming didn't do it to help the thunder god escape from the thunder tribulations. He did it because this world could hardly withstand the thunder tribulations of the void. Destroy. Lin Ming raised his hand and destroyed the thunder tribulations. Why did you come to this world? Lin Ming asked with a cold face. I came to find my sister. The thunder god said with a pale face. The thunder tribulations just now almost took his life. You came at the right time. Your sister has a question for you. Lin Ming nodded and said, What question? Thunder God looked at Ernest Lin, who was standing behind Lin Ming, and asked, other than not bringing her with him while in combat in the void, Lin Ming had always brought Ernest Lin with him. Did you kill my reincarnation? Ernest Lin didn't beat around the bush and asked the Thunder God. That's right, it was me. Thunder God nodded. He didn't hide anything. Tell me the reason. Ernest Lin's expression didn't change. She asked again. There's no reason, the Thunder God also said directly. Well then, that's easy. Just die then. Lin Ming snorted coldly. The power in his hand condensed and directly landed on the Thunder God's body. Pooh! The Thunder God spat out a mouthful of blood. Lin Ming, leave him to me. No matter what. They had been brother and sister for a long time now. Therefore, Ernest Lin still couldn't bear seeing the Thunder God vomit blood. Lin Ming nodded after hearing it. He had only given the Thunder God a blow to prevent him from having the ability to play any tricks with his wicked thoughts. Lin Ming couldn't be bothered to interfere with the rest. Do you have a plan? Ernest Lin looked at the Thunder God and asked. I don't have any good ideas, unlike you. The Thunder God's face was pale as he said, To be honest, I know what you're thinking. Ernest Lin smiled and said, You do? Tell me then. The Thunder God looked at Ernest Lin and said, You're probably just thinking about exterminating the entire clan and just to enable yourself. Ernest Lin sneered and said, You. Upon hearing Ernest Lin's words, the Thunder God immediately frowned. He didn't expect Ernest Lin to have actually said these words. These words had exposed him as they were what he had thought. They had always relied on faith to strengthen themselves. With so many new gods now, their faith was split. This made the Thunder God feel that he would never be able to break through to reach the realm of the Heavenly Emperor and the others. Your thoughts are truly terrifying. Ernest Lin looked at the Thunder God and said, But can you tell me how you knew? The Thunder God looked at Ernest Lin and asked, Other than being called the Goddess of War, I am also known as the Goddess of Wisdom. Ernest Lin looked directly at Thunder God and said calmly, To be honest, I knew what you were thinking from the moment you killed my reincarnation. You were just afraid that I would find a way to speed up the cultivation of the power of faith and be in your way. But don't worry, I won't block your path. Because with your intelligence, people who believe in you are fundamentally different from people who believe in me. Ernest Lin's words were full of mockery. Besides, your idea won't come true at all. Have you never thought that if you're the only one left, the void monsters will devour you? Ernest Lin spoke again. With just them, when my power reaches the extreme, no one will be a match for me. The Thunder God snorted and spoke. Ernest Lin couldn't help but laugh. You came to this world for a reason, right? Ernest Lin asked. It's probably because I have countless clones in every world now, and all the power of faith will be transferred into my body in the end. You must be jealous, Ernest Lin sneered. So you came here to take a look and see if you could steal it. Ernest Lin's feelings for her brother were all gone by this point. What she had now was an unspeakable loathing. Ernest Lin, what right do you have? The Thunder God roared. Do you even have the right to ask? Power appeared in Ernest Lin's hand. With Lin Ming's guidance, as well as the power of faith from the clones of each world that poured into her body, Ernest Lin's cultivation speed had become extremely fast. Now she already had the power to defeat the Thunder God. I will bring you to Father and make him imprison you. Ernest Lin said coldly. Father? Hearing Ernest Lin's mention of the Father God, the Thunder God couldn't help but laugh. You do mean Father God? If it wasn't for his lecherous nature, we wouldn't have had so many new gods. The power we could have obtained would have undergone a qualitative change. If it wasn't for his lecherous nature, our faction would have long been able to contend against the Heavenly Emperor's faction. The Thunder God roared with resentment. The difference between your faction and the Heavenly Emperor's faction isn't just because of the power of faith. Lin Ming spoke coldly from the side. Your foundation is still far from enough, Lin Ming added. It wasn't that Lin Ming looked down on them. But the point was that even if they could obtain an endless amount of power of faith, they still couldn't contend against the Heavenly Emperor's faction. First of all, there was a huge difference between them in their foundation and methods of existence. The whole reason why Lin Ming had told Ernest Lin to not tell others about the cultivation method he had given her was also that he could allow more than one existence in the new god faction that could contend against the Heavenly Emperor and the others. This person could only be Ernest Lin. If it weren't for you, my plan would have succeeded. You now have the power you want, but what about me? The Thunder God roared and actually wanted to take the initiative to attack Lin Ming. However, Ernest Lin's current power had far surpassed the Thunder God's. She trapped him on the spot. You should know that Father God is planning something unimaginable. I merely thought of exterminating the entire clan to enable myself. But Father's plan can be said to be vicious. The Thunder God laughed hysterically and said, after hearing the Thunder God's words, Ernest Lin frowned. She had now learned that there were many conspiracies in the new god faction. Your father had just fought for the Dragon Vein. Lin Ming looked at Ernest Lin and said, I can see that your father's strength has grown extremely fast recently. It has even exceeded your growth speed. That shouldn't be possible, right? Ernest Lin frowned and said, one had to know that the power of faith was basically in a state of saturation. If it wasn't for the cultivation method Lin Ming had taught her and her many clones, even if Ernest Lin had obtained a lot of power of faith, her growth speed would also not be as fast. But now, Lin Ming said that her father god had surpassed her growth speed, which made Ernest Lin feel a little incredulous. Ernest Lin, many things are much darker and more complicated than you think. I'm just the purest person. The Thunder God laughed and said, in our faction, there are 3 existences of the same tier as Lord Laotzi. Why would they support us? Have you thought about it? The Thunder God asked. As for why our Father God can make his power grow so quickly in such a short time, do you know the reason? Also, you've only heard of those 3 existences. You haven't seen them either, right? The Thunder God felt like he had to spit everything on his chest out. He told her everything that he had found. Right now, all he wanted to do was to bury some seeds in Ernest Lin's heart. Are you done with your nonsense? Just as Ernest Lin was racking her brain, Lin Ming's voice sounded. No matter what, I will still hand you over to Father for punishment. Ernest Lin said, don't. I can tell you straight that if you hand me over to Father for punishment, I'm afraid you'll never see me again. The Thunder God desperately shook his head and said, why is that? Ernest Lin felt more and more that everything wasn't so simple anymore. Go investigate yourself. I can't explain it clearly either. However, I can be sure that the number of new gods is slowly decreasing. The Thunder God replied. Hearing this, Ernest Lin naturally wouldn't hand the Thunder God over to her father. The Thunder God knew Ernest Lin's character well. If he said this, even if Ernest Lin would hand him over to their father, it would be after she had investigated everything thoroughly. Only when she was certain that there were no problems with Father, only then would she hand him over. Just stay in my small world for the time being. After Lin Ming finished saying this, the Thunder God's figure disappeared on the spot, then reappeared in Lin Ming's small world. The child controlled everything in Lin Ming's small world, so the Thunder God simply had no ability to do any destruction there. Lin Ming, Ernest Lin threw herself into Lin Ming's arms. She didn't know what to do now. Her brother wanted to kill her, and her father was planning a bigger and more terrifying plan. Don't worry, I'm always here. Lin Ming caressed Ernest Lin's hair and said, what should I do? Ernest Lin said helplessly. If she was asked to investigate other things, she would naturally kill decisively. But now, in the investigation against her father and brother, she had become like a little girl. I'll be with you throughout the investigation. Lin Ming said, what you need to think about now is, if there's really something wrong with your father, as your brother, what will you do? Moreover, your father's problem will most definitely be bigger and more terrifying. If she didn't have an answer to this question, it would be meaningless to investigate at all. After all, if one couldn't make someone pay for what he did, any investigation would be in vain. If there's really something wrong, I will be resolute in my heart. Ernest Lin took a deep breath and said, that's good. Lin Ming nodded. You investigate the matter. If I appear in the investigation, It'll be very difficult to find the problem, Lin Ming said to Ernest Lin. If Lin Ming appeared along with Ernest Lin, that old guy would definitely be on guard. If Ernest Lin investigated it herself, the old guy would be much less cautious. Buzz. Lin Ming's body transformed, and he became illusory and smaller. In the end, he appeared in Ernest Lin's palm. Ernest Lin's heart was at ease. As long as Lin Ming was with her, she would have much less to worry about. Let's go. Lin Ming's voice entered Ernest Lin's ears. Ernest Lin nodded, then returned to the New God faction. Your Highness, you're back. The minute Ernest Lin entered the New God's territory, a series of complimentary voices appeared. I wonder if I may ask about the princess's cultivation technique. A new god appeared in front of Ernest Lin and said, No. Ernest Lin refused frankly. She couldn't be bothered to be polite about such things. This was because it wasn't polite for someone to ask such a question. To begin with, how disappointing. A voice appeared. Ernest Lin looked over and saw an 8-winged angel appear before her. Who do you think you are? Ernest Lin said mercilessly. Tesk tesk. Our princess has grown wings now. In the past, you wouldn't have talked to me like this even with your noble identity. But now you have just grown a little, and you're already having such an attitude. The 8-winged angel looked at Ernest Lin and said coldly. Grum, Ernest Lin said. I'll just be here today. What can you do to me? The 8-winged angel looked at Ernest Lin coldly and said. She didn't expect that Ernest Lin would not give her any face in public. Sword of Justice. Ernest Lin said coldly. As Ernest Lin spoke, a huge divine sword appeared above the 8-winged angel. The sword of justice slashed down fiercely. The force caused the 8-winged angel's expression to change. To think Ernest Lin had not cultivated for a long time, yet her attack was now so powerful. Just the attack of the sword of justice was enough to make the 8-winged angel feel greatly threatened. Boom! Under the incredulous gazes of all the new gods, the 8-winged angel spat out a mouthful of blood. How was this possible? The 8-winged angel was the strongest angel, but now, Ernest Lin's attack had made her spit out blood. How did Ernest Lin become so powerful? The 8-winged angel frowned and endured the pain in her body. Ernest Lin knew that Lin Ming had merged his power with her sword of justice during the attack just now. Otherwise, no matter how fast Ernest Lin's power had grown, it would be impossible to render the 8-winged angel unable to fight back at all. We've caused a bit of a ruckus, haven't we? Ernest Lin said worriedly. Right now, she needed to investigate the matters regarding the new gods. But the battle just now had placed her directly at the center of the storm. From this moment on, everyone's gazes were fixed on Ernest Lin. This would make it very difficult for Ernest Lin to secretly investigate some matters. If you investigate, I'm afraid it will take a long time. However, if we make the conspiracy finds you, the time it will take to find the truth will be much shorter. Lin Ming told her the reason why he had increased the attack power of the sword of justice just now. With such power, Ernest Lin was the best lure in the face of conspiracy and power growth. Go ahead and investigate first. I'll always be by your side. Lin Ming said, then added, though. You have to let them know that I'm not by your side. Only then will the investigation be easier. Okay, I got it. Lin Ming was too strong. The pressure he had on the old man and the new gods was too strong since they didn't have the power to resist him at all. Therefore, if the old man knew that Lin Ming was always by Ernest Lin's side, he probably wouldn't give himself away easily. You should also create a clone and do something in the void. Ernest Lin said to Lin Ming. Sure. Lin Ming nodded. With that, a clone of Lin Ming appeared in the void. TL go to father's position. Ernest Lin said and went to the old man's temple. Father. Ernest Lin said as she entered the temple. Right now, no one could sense Lin Ming's aura. Ernest Lin, you're here. The old man sat on his throne and said. Father, I have some questions to ask you. Ernest Lin sat next to the old man and said. I have some questions too. Let me ask you first. The old man said. Okay. Ernest Lin nodded. This would let her know what the old man was thinking. Anyway, have you always been with Lin Ming? The old man asked directly. Yes, Ernest Lin nodded. She had indeed always been with Lin Ming. He had made the Heavenly Emperor and the Buddha retreat. Even Lord Laotzi didn't make a move. Now, the dragon vein is under his control. Did he give you some of it? The old man looked at Ernest Lin and asked. Didn't he directly put the dragon vein back into the earth vein? He didn't take any for himself at all. Ernest Lin frowned. She didn't expect the old man to ask this question. You believe in his words? You're just too naive. The dragon vein is such a treasure. It's the incarnation of the fate of heaven and earth. Did he spend so much effort just to put the fate of heaven and earth back into the earth vein? Let alone myself. No one will believe these words if you tell them. The old man snorted and said, Father, I'm not lying to you. I'm telling the truth. Ernest Lin said. Ernest Lin was the one who knew the best whether Lin Ming had ulterior motives or not. Lin Ming's thoughts could not be guessed in accordance with normal psychology. This was also the reason why Lin Ming could grow so quickly. In front of righteousness, Lin Ming was very admirable. He did not even blink his eyes when he put the fate of heaven and earth back into the earth vein. Moreover, he did not hesitate to become enemies with the heavenly emperor and the others for this matter. As such, Ernest Lin was naturally the first to stand up and speak for Lin Ming when her father was suspicious of Lin Ming at this moment. You still don't understand. How can you see through the methods of someone like Lin Ming who has countless methods? The old man sighed and said, he simply didn't believe that Lin Ming did not have any selfishness before the fate of heaven and earth. Forget it, father. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. Ernest Lin sighed as well. She knew that no matter what she said, the old man would never believe her. Let me ask you, did Lin Ming give you some of the dragon vein? The old man actually spoke a little impatiently at this time. This made Ernest Lin feel the change in her father even more. This was because the old man loved Ernest Lin the most. Normally, he pampered her to the point she would be spoiled. When had he ever been impatient or even annoyed at her? No, Ernest Lin resolutely shook her head and said, Father, it's my turn to ask you questions. Ernest Lin looked at the old man and said, I still have something important to do. If you have any questions, wait until I finish my seclusion before asking. The old man waved his hand, sounding somewhat like he was simply coaxing her. Father. Ernest Lin frowned. There was definitely something wrong with the old man. I've just said that I want to cultivate in seclusion. Can't you hear me? The old man said impatiently. If Ernest Lin could give him some of the dragon vein, he wouldn't have put on such an attitude. But now, in his opinion, Ernest Lin was utterly worthless to him. So, he wouldn't give Ernest Lin a good attitude at all. Now, he even felt a sense of annoyance looking at her. I just want to ask one question. Ernest Lin's attitude was extremely firm as she spoke. You. With this, the old fellow's aura directly erupted. Even Ernest Lin, who had grown fast, felt suffocated for a minute because of the pressure of this power. This? Ernest Lin frowned, her face filled with disbelief. On one hand, she simply didn't know how her father could grow so fast. According to Ernest Lin's growth rate now, her strength should currently be about the same as this old man's. It should have been impossible for her to feel such strong pressure from the old man. Ernest Lin just didn't believe that her father could grow so fast. On the other hand, she didn't dare to believe that her father would get so impatient with her because of one sentence she had said. To think he had directly exploded his aura and suppressed her. This would not have happened before, the number of new gods in our faction decreasing. Haven't you noticed? Ernest Lin continued to speak. Regardless of whether her father gave her pressure or not, she would still ask, because she had the confidence to be able to retreat unscathed since Lin Ming was right by her. She trusted Lin Ming deeply. I'm still investigating this matter. You don't have to think too much about it. Nor do you have to question me about it, the old man said with a dark expression. Father, does it have anything to do with you? Ernest Lin looked at the old man and asked again. Ernest Lin, what do you mean? The old man stood up and said coldly. I'm just asking. Father, you don't have to be so angry. Ernest Lin looked directly at the old man and didn't give in. No. The old man was silent for a while before he said, while he sat back down on his throne. Really? Ernest Lin said. Are you suspecting me? The old man's face was ice cold as he asked. Yes, I'm investigating this matter. I'm only here to say hello to you. Ernest Lin sensed the change in her father and nodded. If there was really nothing wrong with her father, he wouldn't have treated her like this. Wait. Just as Ernest Lin was about to leave the temple, the old man's voice suddenly sounded. His aura was also continuously rising. Ernest Lin had an indescribable expression on her face. Could it be that her father was going to make a move against her now? In the end, if it really does have something to do with me, will you make a move against me? This old man actually asked this. Yes, Ernest Lynn nodded. Regardless of whether the old man would attack her because of her reply, Ernest Lynn would tell the truth at the bottom of her heart. I see, the old man nodded. Then all of his imposing aura disappeared. With that, Ernest Lynn left without looking back. Why has father become like this? Ernest Lynn said, somewhat at a loss. Ernest Lynn didn't know why her father had become like this. After all, the old man had always doted on her. One had to know when Ernest Lynn had returned from her reincarnation. The old man had risked being chased out by the Heavenly Emperor and being bullied just to ask the Heavenly Emperor for the peach of immortality for her. But now, just because of a few words, he had used his aura to suppress her, forcing her to leave quickly. At this moment, in comparison to the old man's doting on her previously, Ernest Lynn could feel the stark difference that was like heaven and earth. She was once again like a little girl and was at a loss. At this moment, Ernest Lynn couldn't just shed all pretense of cordiality with her father. Her first thought was to investigate the matter herself. Ernest Lynn, can you tell me about your cultivation method? Suddenly, the old man's voice entered Ernest Lynn's ears. The old man's eyes were bloodshot. Back then, he had promised Lin Ming that he wouldn't ask for the cultivation method. After all, the cultivation method could only help one person. However, now that the old man's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds, it was as if he had gone mad. He would do anything for the growth of his strength. And now, he actually had his eyes on his daughter whom he had always doted on. Father, I really can't tell you about the cultivation method. Back then, I did make an oath of faith. Ernest Lynn shook her head and said, Ernest Lynn would never give the cultivation method to her father because he just didn't seem normal now. Not even me. An indescribable emotion flashed through her father's eyes. I'm sorry, father. Ernest Lynn lowered her head, wanting to leave. Ernest Lynn, you just need to tell me a few key points. This won't count as you breaking your promise and you won't have to worry about the backlash from breaking the oath of faith. The old man stopped Ernest Lynn from behind and said, even a bit is a no. Ernest Lynn said with some disappointment. How had her father become like this? For the sake of his advancement in strength, he didn't hesitate to let her face the backlash of the oath of faith. HMPH. The old man snorted coldly and left. If it wasn't because of the relationship between Ernest Lynn and him, he might have already made a move. At this moment, the old man appeared in the temple, his brows tightly knitted. He had also realized that he was having difficulty controlling himself now. However, he knew that if he wanted to grow his power, he would have to give something up in exchange. I hope that I can obtain the strongest power before my consciousness completely disappears. The old man closed his eyes and said. He knew that if he could obtain the strongest power, he could naturally suppress his inner demon. On the other hand, if he took a wrong step, he would be completely doomed. However, right now, he was being suppressed by the Heavenly Emperor's faction in every aspect. That was why the idea of becoming the strongest had been born in his mind even if he had to become a demon. Right now, Ernest Lynn is the biggest stumbling block. The old man sighed. Lin Ming, who is behind Ernest Lynn, is the biggest threat. When the old man thought of Lin Ming, he felt even more furious. If Lin Ming had not appeared, he could have used his power to put Ernest Lynn under house arrest and complete his matters. However, because of Lin Ming, if he put Ernest Lynn under house arrest, Lin Ming would be the first to appear. Although his power was growing rapidly, he knew that he was no match for Lin Ming. Therefore, at this time, besides guarding against Ernest Lynn, the most important person he had to guard against was Lin Ming. The point now was that Ernest Lynn had already discovered some clues. She wasn't known as the goddess of wisdom for nothing, other than having the most accurate observation ability. If she had doubts, she would definitely be able to find out the truth. However, the old man knew that he couldn't become the strongest before Ernest Lynn found out the truth if he let her be. He still needed time and preparation. And now, he couldn't control his consciousness easily, which also made it easy for him to expose himself in front of Ernest Lynn. Ernest Lynn. The old man's voice echoed in the New God faction. Ernest Lynn, who was in the middle of the investigation, frowned but still went to the temple. Ernest Lynn. I have something I need someone to help me with. I don't trust anyone else, so I need you to help me. The old man looked at Ernest Lin and said, What is it? Ernest Lin frowned and asked. My statue was shattered in the world of Neptune. It was caused by someone from the New God faction. Please help me go and take a look. The old man said, Father, I have something to do. I'm afraid I can't agree to your request. Ernest Lin sighed and said, Besides, Father, you have so many experts under you. Any one of them can help you solve this problem. The old man's intention to send her away was too obvious. Well, isn't this because I'm worried too? The old man sighed and said, This is our family's matter after all. We can't expose our family's dirty laundry. Do you understand what I mean? Right, Lin Ming is considered one of us. How about letting Lin Ming go? Ernest Lin said. Lin Ming? When the old man heard Ernest Lin's words, he was slightly taken aback. He hadn't expected Ernest Lin to mention Lin Ming at this time. Not only had she mentioned it, but she had even suggested to let Lin Ming go to the other world to help him investigate this matter. This made the old man extremely excited. Ernest Lin was only a very small part of the reason why he was so hesitant in doing anything now. The most important part of the reason was the man behind Ernest Lin. Lin Ming. As long as Lin Ming was not by Ernest Lin's side, he would be able to do many things with ease. But is Lin Ming willing to help us with this? The old man asked Ernest Lin. If Lin Ming would go, that would be the best. As long as I ask, of course he's willing. Ernest Lin nodded and promised. Of course, Ernest Lin knew what her father was thinking. She had long prepared an excuse for the old man to send Lin Ming away. As expected, the old man wanted to send Lin Ming away. With this, the excuse Ernest Lin had prepared could be put into use. But where is Lin Ming now? The old man sighed and said. The old man was saying this just to test Ernest Lin. After all, Lin Ming's power was much greater than his. Therefore, if Lin Ming wanted to hide his aura, he wouldn't be able to discover him at all. Even if Lin Ming was under his nose, it would be the same. Therefore, the old man was extremely guarded against Lin Ming. I have a way to contact him. Ernest Lin indicated that there was no problem, and to just leave the matter to her. Before Lin Ming had come here, he had sent out a clone. On top of that, Lin Ming's outer incarnation had about 90% of his strength. Even if the old man's strength had increased by leaps and bounds and was growing at an abnormal rate, he would still be unable to notice anything wrong with Lin Ming's clone. This was because even if he continued to grow, he was still far from reaching even 90% of Lin Ming's strength. Buzz! Ernest Lin crushed the spirit talisman that she had prepared earlier, and a surge of power appeared. Following that, Lin Ming's clone arrived in the temple 15 minutes later. Ernest Lin, what's the matter? Lin Ming's clone asked. There's something father wants me to investigate for him, but it just so happens I have something I need do, so I would like you to investigate father's matter for me. Ernest Lin said to Lin Ming's clone. What does your father's matter have to do with me? Lin Ming's clone frowned and asked. Since they were putting up a show, he had to act every detail out. If he agreed too easily, the old fellow probably wouldn't believe in it. Even though this old fellow's consciousness wasn't very clear anymore, he wasn't a fool yet. Lin Ming, I really have something on. If you're willing to help me this time, I can agree to the matter you mentioned last time. Ernest Lin's face flushed red as she spoke. What matter? Lin Ming's clone was stunned for a moment. He had never said anything that could make Ernest Lin blush. What do you think? Don't play dumb. Ernest Lin acted shy and coy as she said. I got it. You don't have to say any more. I'll promise you to this matter. Lin Ming reacted quickly and nodded. Go on then. Tell me what the matter is about. Lin Ming frowned and said. It's... Ernest Lin told Lin Ming's clone about the old man's excuse for making her leave. Such a small matter? Lin Ming's clone frowned. He didn't expect that the old man's consciousness would be so poor. He should have at least used a better excuse if he wanted to send them away. Even if Lin Ming went, he could directly solve it. What's the point of making him leave for such a short time? What could the old man do in such a short time? After all, family scandals should not be exposed. We are family, so we can share everything. Ernest Lin said to Lin Ming. I got it. Just remember what you promised me. Lin Ming's clone nodded and said. Okay, Tilda, Ernest Lin said shyly. Oh right. I happen to have a friend in the world of Neptune. I'll go settle some things while I'm there. It might take some time. You have to be careful during this period of time, Lin Ming's clone said. Since the old guy's consciousness was so poor to have come up with such a crude reason, Lin Ming could only help him refine the crude reason. I got it, Ernest Lin nodded. This way, the old man would lower his guard and give himself away. Then I'll hurry back. After Lin Ming finished saying this, he disappeared from the spot. Following Lin Ming's departure, the old man heaved a sigh of relief. Regarding the words you just said, what did you promise Lin Ming? The old man looked at Ernest Lin and asked. Nothing, Ernest Lin answered. I have been a father for so long. If I could have a bloodline inheritance, I would be extremely happy. If you can, you don't have to hide it. The old man said to Ernest Lin. If Lin Ming would marry Ernest Lin and the couple would give birth to a child, the new god faction could then welcome the strongest expert that would truly belong to them. How could Ernest Lin not know the old man's wishful thinking? And at this moment, Lin Ming, who was on Ernest Lin's arm, felt a wave of heat from her body. By the way, Lin Ming had said that he had to go to the world of Neptune to settle some matters. Do you know anything about it? The old man changed the topic and asked about what Lin Ming wanted to do in the world of Neptune. After all, he wanted to deduce the time Lin Ming needed through what he was planning to do. He wanted to see if Lin Ming would only return after he became the strongest. I don't know, but I know Lin Ming's character. He loves to reminisce. Since he said that he has friends in the world of Neptune, I'm afraid he's probably just there to reminisce, which will take a few days. Ernest Lin knew the old man's intentions, so she told the old man the estimated time. Then for Lin Ming to solve your problem will also take a few days. So, in total, about 10 days. When the old man heard this, he frowned. The time was too short. However, 10 days were also enough for him to finish a lot of things. You can leave first. I have almost obtained the answer to whatever you're investigating, so you don't have to worry about it so much. The old man waved his hand and said, The answer? What's the answer? Ernest Lin frowned and asked. It should be your brother who used some unknown method. The old man thought for a moment before saying, Brother? Ernest Lin frowned when she heard the answer. That's right. You haven't seen your brother these days, right? Just wait for me to get my hands on him and teach him a good lesson. The old man nodded and said confidently, I got it. Ernest Lin snorted and said, Wasn't this old man lying through his teeth? The thunder god had indeed disappeared. But that was because he was now in her hands. Since he was in her hands, how could he have done these many things? Even if he wanted to, he didn't have a chance.